This is the Chanel show, one of the hardest invitations to get at Paris Fashion Week. Every seat here has a dollar amount worth more than a month's rent in Paris, and yet somehow we're inside. I am pleased to say that this is a significant milestone for the channel. We were invited to and will now cover Chanel under its new leadership under Matthieu Blazy. People ask Danny and I all the time how we're able to go to runway shows to cover them in the first place. All it took was 8 years, no weekends, 300 videos, 50,000 hours of work, and poof, we're at Chanel. Have you heard of Chanel? The classic flap Chanel No. 5, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That Chanel exists because of two people, Gabrielle Chanel and Karl Lagerfeld. Both of those people understood that Chanel's power comes from consistency. In this video, you'll see what it actually looks like to be at every major show during this historic Paris Fashion Week. But we have to start here at the top because this show is the strongest measure of how fashion will never be the same after this season. I hope. To get a view of that landscape, let's just say, for example, that we took Christian Dior, like the man, and zapped him forward into the future to, we'll say, 2015. For better or for worse, I don't think that Christian Dior would recognize very much of the company that he started. Same for Cristobal Balenciaga. I think he would be really confused if you zapped him forward to the future. Yves Saint Laurent, the man, actually yelled at Tom Ford famously one time because he didn't like how much he was changing his company. The one person who would still recognize the brand they started is Gabrielle Chanel. Sure, I mean, the brand has gotten bigger, but in the luxury industry, Chanel is the closest thing that we have to timelessness. But timelessness does not mean immortal. We are 115 years into Chanel's history right now. It's a company that turns about as slowly as the French Republic's, and we're now at a turning point to launch Chanel into its next century. Enter Matthieu Blazy. Let's start from the beginning. I was actually lucky enough to get to walk to the Grand Palais for the Chanel show from another runway show which coincidentally took place at Karl Lagerfeld's former residence in Paris. Now, the Grand Palais is a gargantuan building. It is 750,000 square feet. A football field, an American football field with end zones can comfortably fit inside the main room of the Grand Palais. Everyone has seen clips of the Grand Palais, but it is a totally different experience sitting in that room with 2,000 other guests, which is a massive show, but there were even large sections of the room that weren't being used at all. Chanel has a long history of runway shows taking place at the Grand Palais, and the history of those collection events is meant to communicate one thing: power. You'll notice that in all the shows under Karl Lagerfeld, the audience is seated far away from the models themselves. And that's because the clothes were important, but not the day of the show. The day of the show is meant to use an indoor beach, a handmade ice environment, and a biblically accurate space shuttle to throw the gauntlet down and show the world that Chanel is in business and business is booming. And that tone is very Lagerfeld. He dressed, acted, and performed like the kingpin overlord of fashion. But that tone does not so much match with the person that we know to be Matthieu Blazy, whose career has mostly been defined by humility, good leadership, and hard work. Daniela and I even made a video a while back talking about how Matthieu's entire career is like an Olympian training for the big day. Blazy learned about great menswear while working at Raf Simons. He was introduced to couture and craft when he was the secret creative director at Maison Martin Margiela. Blazy learned about the business of womenswear under Phoebe Philo at Celine. He helped Sterling Ruby start a really strange bid for couture. He was one of the masterminds behind the Raf era at Calvin Klein. And he was, of course, creative director at one of the only conglomerated houses that really focuses intensely on craft. Blazy is a curious autodidact who knows and loves great fashion. He does not have the stern authoritarianism that Karl Lagerfeld had, but he will be showing at the Grand Palais. So he uses that budget and that power to completely unprecedented effect. Let's go inside. It's a model of the solar system, all the planets in our sun. These are all balls suspended or installed in the Grand Palais. And the black mirrored floor really seals the deal for me. Walking through this environment was extremely immersive. Even in a room of 2,000 excited, chattering people, the effect here was airtight. And obviously, this is an expensive set, no doubt about it. A small American house could have fit inside the model of the sun. But to me, this environment more evoked a sense of wonder and curiosity rather than the power that Chanel shows typically exude. And there is actually a cute sense of continuity if you compare the solar system in the Grand Palais to these images from the early years of the Paris Air Show. This was also held at the Grand Palais almost 100 years ago. And it's fun to look at these images and remember that a lot of the techniques and a lot of the fabrics that are in this Chanel show, the more miraculous ones, would not have been technically possible when these photos were taken. Something I want us to notice as we begin to watch this show is that the collection is beautiful, but it isn't like screaming for our attention. There's certainly moments that have a little more pizzazz, but it is nothing compared to the recent fashion runway trends of these huge gimmicks. But put a pin in that, because ultimately there were two Chanel shows. The one that happened at the Grand Palais and the one that happened the next morning in the showroom. We got extremely up close with the textiles and techniques that made Matthieu Blazy's premiere at Chanel the barn burner that it was. The details on these clothes looked fantastic, but they felt otherworldly. And that is not a pun. I'm actually a massive nerd about the human sense of touch, and I have a running list in my head of my top tactile experiences, and I am pleased to say that Chanel Spring 26 is one of the only runway show collections that actually made that top list. This is knotted metal tweed. What you're looking at is metallic gold yarn that has been knotted and twisted together and then woven into a tweed. But the really crazy part is at the bottom of the skirt and at the bottom of the top, where the twists open up and get to express their properties without being woven down tightly to that grid. It looked scratchy, but it wasn't. This metallic dress was incredibly soft. I actually wanted to try them on, but they don't make them in boy sizes. Our showroom visit to Chanel made me believe that maybe we're moving towards a time where these huge runway gimmicks that the industry depends on to sell things will slowly over time get replaced with specialness. And I've used that word before and I stand by it. That's the right word, specialness. There is, of course, this sense of awe when you look at the runway set, but beyond that, there is a deep pool of rich detail to enjoy touching and seeing if someone is lucky enough to take one of these pieces home. Let's get more specific. This is a belted skirt suit with a high-necked blouse and some pumps. But if we get very, very close up, we can see that the skirt suit has a base structure of cotton netting, onto which they have embroidered gold sequins. The gold sequins, though, are mixed in with thousands of these little guys, the little pieces that look like tiny cannolis. These are rolled pieces of cotton. It creates this subtle but distinct movement when the model walks. There's a lot of weight to it. And I think the purpose of this look is to start expanding the audience's understanding of what tweed can be. Tweed, of course, is a word with a definition, and that definition is not going to change, but tweed is based off of a just basic grid structure, right? The strict boundaries of that grid are what allow an artisan to create the explosive amount of variety in tweed that Chanel has had throughout its entire history. I think Matthieu is taking that classic grid structure and then finding what else he can do with it. And we can already see that he's found a number of ideas that he can elaborate on for many years. Here again, with a fairly standard jacket that dissolves down the sleeve in a textured ombre until your wrists are covered in a little melody of beads. Way back in July, months before this premiere, Matthieu posted to his Instagram story a picture of a little peekabird by a fountain. For as long as we have had fashion designers, the industry has been obsessed with the beauty of birds and trying to transpose that beauty onto women. And the Pika bird seems to have been the starting point for this rather daring project. I will say it up front, I am not positive exactly how Chanel achieved this technique, but I do know that this involves what's called fil coupé. That's a technique where the artisan creates an image or just a shape using horizontal threads. I think the fil coupé technique is where these little flyaways, the quote feathers, would come from. This image isn't from Chanel, but this demonstrates pretty well how the fil coupé, at the very ends there, it can kind of create this almost feather-like effect if these are dense enough. And it seems like they made this piece by prioritizing and styling the flyaway threads and then screen printing on top of everything. But then again, I'm not absolutely positive about that. And the reason that I'm demonstrating my ignorance here is because I am really excited to go back to the Chanel showroom next season and get a closer look to actually see if they develop this technique further. I love that they found a way to make a shape at Chanel of all houses that is this big and ends up looking so elegant. Some lucky lady gets to walk around looking like a little peekabird. And of course, the final number, which saw Awar Odiang emerge in a wild skirt made of feathers, silk flowers, and tubes of organza. This footage is from another similar skirt in the show, but it's the same setup. In order to get this bursting, celebratory look to everything as Awar walked, everything was placed and sewn in by the experts at Maison Le Mariée, another branch of Chanel's Métiers d'Art. And the bombastic skirt is balanced by the beautiful double satin on top. And this skirt actually is worth doubling back on because of the movement. If you watch her walk, it feels like she's being carried weightlessly by the skirt, almost like she's like riding an animal during a parade. You can really see it when she throws her arms out like she's flying, like she might as well actually be flying. I can't say with certainty, but I think I can see the vision here. Not like the themes of the collection or little references to Gabrielle Chanel's life, but the vision for Chanel going forward as one of the leading brands of the fashion industry. I think the message here is that we have gone too far making clothes primarily for a screen. The most dominant change of fashion design of the last 20 years is that designers are less and less creating clothes for the experience of the people who will buy them and more creating clothes that will hopefully make you stop scrolling on your phone. Frankly, most graduating fashion students and young brand owners are more concerned now with micro-trending search terms than they are with creating beautiful sensory experiences for their future customers. Many conglomerated houses are just trying to figure out how they can sell a plain cotton t-shirt for even more money. The current number, by the way, is $1,600 US. Do you remember how fashion houses were spoken about in the films of the 60s and 70s? They were spoken of mythologically. And I understand that it is very easy to over-romanticize luxury fashion, but at their best, these houses should be Oz. This should be the chocolate factory. Luxury brands should be places where you go to see fantastic things that you didn't know existed and the things you can't believe are possible. Mr. Blazy does not carry the powerful tone of the late Mr. Lagerfeld, but hopefully he is going to use the power of the Maison to put craft, quality, and care first. If I'm right, and this is the new idea at Chanel, then as the audience, we need to understand that the ship is going to turn slowly. Personally, I am not looking for Chanel to completely overhaul everything about the company in the next 9 months. I will be looking for the next few years to see how Matthieu Blazy will shape Chanel into a completely new place. You know, in fashion, we're pretty lucky. If you look at the film industry, the best people don't get selected for the biggest jobs. Here, I think it is one of the few examples where one of the big players made the right decision. Congratulations to Matthieu. I'm really excited to see what comes next. This season was our first attending the house of Alaïa.
Hell yeah! That's
Right! We have wanted to cover Alaïa for like 4 years. After Azzedine Alaïa's tragic death in 2017, the fashion industry did not hear much from the brand until it was revitalized in 2022 under the direction of Pieter Mulier. The brand was showing predominantly off the Fashion Week calendar, so we didn't really have a way to cover the first 8 seasons by Pieter. That was very unfun for us in the short term, but it actually made a lot of sense considering Alaïa's history, because Mr. Alaïa, the man himself, was known for only showing when the clothes were ready. Like, imagine that. And now, under Mr. Mulier's tenure, the show when you're ready model once again has been proven to be a great way of doing things. It is no secret that Pieter Mulier has been one-shotting the chicest women on earth with his mesh flats, Lateco bag, amongst other hit Alaïa products that are being bought by young women in a desperate attempt to capture the magic of these runway shows. Clothes that cry. I didn't expect that to be so literal, but this show was so good that not only was Raf crying in the audience, Raf was Pieter's mentor at Raf Simons and at Jill Sander, but Danny left the venue bawling, and she's never cried at a runway show before. Clothes that really do cry. Our walk into the former Cartier Foundation building was pretty surreal. Outside, it was raining harder than it had rained all week, which makes capturing walk-ups basically impossible. A concierge checked us in and escorted us under an umbrella to a transformed interior. A massive mirror on the ceiling that reflected a screen on the floor, and the best sound system that I have heard at Fashion Week. The set was crafted by industry veterans at Bureau Batek. The show began with a floor video that blew up the premiere models' faces, cranking the saturation on their eyes, while that self-same model walked over the display. I actually found this to be a very tasteful throwback to Azzedine Alaïa's contribution to the phenomena of supermodels. Like, everybody knows about the one moment at the end of that Versace show where all the girls walked out, but an idea as big as supermodel is never created in a single moment. The zeitgeist tends to move a little more like a cloud. Movement seems to be a new feature of Pieter Mulier's Alaïa, which seems at odds when you consider Azzedine's slinky look, or body conscious, as the fashion critics coined it during Azzedine's reign. Pieter hasn't shied away from the bodycon concept, introducing many sexy and actually interesting clingy dresses and clothes during his tenure. And we got some bodycon all-stars in this collection, but let's put a pin in that. In this show, Pieter Mulier and his team have blessed us with Movement the Musical, with the elegant silk fringe knee-high socks underneath tunics, with many other looks styling them underneath dresses and skirts. I think that the fringes are supposed to be cascading tears, the clothes that cry. These coats and dresses are made of macrame, crafted to look like feathers, and they have this beautiful, more subdued and approachable bounce to them. The most notable in the excellence in movement category is these asymmetric skirts covered in the heaviest tassels I have ever seen. The weight of them whipping the corner of the skirts as the models walked. The shape of these skirts actually align really well with Azzedine Alaïa's North African roots. It's no secret that Azzedine drew inspiration for his iconic hoods from the jalaba or safsari or bernous, which are worn by people in Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia. This is a well-known house code for Alaïa. In continuing with that spirit and merging both Europe and North Africa, Pieter seems to have been inspired by the spread of Moorish principles into southern Spain, which led to the creation of flamenco, and along with that, flamenco skirts and dresses. I really, really hope these get made and that they sell them exactly like this. Flounces, which I have just learned is the correct plural of flounce, are adding volume instead of movement to the waist of this pair of balloon pants that have been blown apart at the legs, barely clinging to the model's ankles. Balloon pants, or sirwal, or shirwer for my Arab in-laws, are found all over the Middle East and the North African region. Alaïa doing balloon pants as a product makes a ton of sense, and they've been selling them commercially for at least a year now, And I know that they've been an absolute smash hit and have in no small part reignited the hype around that garment category. But the exploded balloon pants become the best version of themselves in the final 3 or so looks, where the amount of fabric used to make the pants was like quadrupled, creating this volume that looks like 18th century European peignets, where the models walked with their arms comfortably down at their exaggerated hips. This is yet another time in this collection where Pieter is reconciling Europe and North Africa. The team at Alaïa is taking cues from those clothes and removing all the cultural context, turning them into something else entirely. You can see that the last 2 looks abandon the ankle wrap entirely, turning it into a full skirt. These trench dresses are gorgeously combining a trench coat with a silk chiffon halter dress, creating this beautiful garment that happens to look a lot like a North African kaftan in the style lines. It's this beautiful understanding that we all share so much in common, executed in clothing. Pieter Mulier's Alaïa has always looked very futuristic. The whole thing is meant to be this sci-fi clothing for women, but done in a realistic and luxurious way. The clothes of the distant future won't exist in a vacuum any more than the clothes of today do. Most futuristic depictions of clothing can forget that. But let's get into the most discussed part of this entire collection. The thneed looks. I say thneed, but really these are like if you took a quintuple XL pair of drop crotch trousers and then put them as a bodysuit onto a model. Like their torso is in the crotch part of the drop crotch. Crotch part of the drop crotch trousers. Wow, MF Doom over here. Front-loaded, sugar-coated, miracle lyrical. Visually, these are unfucking believable. Like, what gorgeous alien is she? But it is now time to talk about arm gate, and that is these 4 looks which caused a great deal of discussion during this fashion week. These looks from the front make it look like you are inside of a blob where you can't use your arms. And that sparked a lot of discussion about whether or not it's appropriate in 2025 to create clothing in which women have limited or no use of their arms. Now, the no arms argument is very convincing if you're only viewing this on Vogue Runway or in a single picture on Instagram. There's no detail looks on Vogue Runway for this show, and I've actually complained about this a lot in the past, that Vogue Runway does not, as a default, show the backs of looks, which is sometimes more important than the front of the looks, as is the case here. Each one is a little bit different. This one is a true jumpsuit. If you look closely, it's obvious that you can use your arms in this garment because she's carrying a clutch inside of her fabric cocoon. This one is a strapless jumpsuit that's just being styled to look a little bit more unsettling and alien-like by putting it over Alex Consani's arms. And before anyone says anything about it, yes, I can see the resemblance. But the best execution of the thneed is this version in these because, oh my fucking gracious, this is genius. It's entirely backless, and you can see that inside the legs of the thneed, they're wearing skinny jeans with their hands tucked into their front pockets, revealing an entirely open back. First off, this is so good. Congrats to Pieter for pulling this off. It's gorgeous. Secondly, you can clearly use your arms with this. This is a cape top that's wrapped around your legs. Or it's an assless jumpsuit. Or some kind of like avant-garde pajamas. Or it's what people say when they don't know what category to put it in. A layering piece. Okay, so for this part, Daniela, my lovely wife, who attended this show, is an awesome fashion critic and wrote this entire review, has something to say here just briefly before we move on.
Hi, folks. I feel like it would be a huge shame if we started making assumptions about the clothes without seeing them entirely. I feel like if women can still freely use their arms in these clothes, I think we can say that any anti-woman accusations are unfounded right here, right now. I'm really surprised that so many people who were in the room, front row, missed it. It's just a really good reminder, I think, that being consumed by your phone for the entirety of a show, I mean, I get that a lot of people are there to post about it, and that really is a part of your job. But if you're a critic, I do not see what you need to be doing on your phone. Maybe it's best for you to pay attention. Being at a runway show is really such a privilege. You should never lose sight of that, I think.
I think so also. Strong agree. Dani doesn't take up the mic very often, but she felt really strongly about that, and so I wanted to kind of give her the opportunity to say it with her own voice. Say it with your chest. The reason this show was my single favorite this season was because of how brilliantly these off-the-shoulder tops are designed. I'm a straight guy who doesn't know how to pattern cut, and I know about this problem. I would like every woman who has had an issue with an off-the-shoulder top to please leave a comment about it. Universal woman experience, I hear. And I realize that those like 5-minute craft websites on TikTok or whatever have come up with sort of a hack job solution for this. I am floored by Mr. Mulier's version. The tension here is fully restored by attaching the shoulder to your hand via a loop that goes around your finger. So not only does it fix that awful issue, it also enables this tension to be maintained in the tops that'll always return to their most flattering form when the wearer puts their arms back down. And that same idea is transferred to the tube skirts, and just like before, it'll never hike up on you because they're looped around the heel. And frankly, while most brands this week were ultra focused on just keeping their customers during the great luxury slowdown, it was really, really refreshing to see someone bring something that was experimental and this successful. And I love that Alaïa keeps all of their hit products off of the runway because of the thieving eyes of fast fashion companies that are known to snatch things up and dupe them before luxury companies can even put them into production. The joke is always on Shein, but joke's on Shein again. How the hell are y'all gonna replicate these?
Shein is a good person. Do not pick on Shein.
All of that, while Pieter Mulier's Alaïa is one of the only brands pushing the envelope of clothing design. It reminds us yet again that we are so far away from all fashion ideas being done. Truly, get you a man that can do both. So ideas, great, fair enough, but what we get here is a vision of femininity that allows women to embrace what they love about being women, but more than any other brand, I can see 25-year-olds and 75-year-olds in these clothes equally. Alaïa speaks to womanhood. Daniela had a great comment that there's no reason to worry about aging the way that a lot of women inevitably will if there are clothes this exciting to look forward to. In our runway awards ceremony last year, Alaïa took home the best ready-to-wear collection and the best single look last year. So it's no exaggeration when I say Pieter Mulier's Alaïa is the single best brand that is currently working in women's wear. I cannot wait to see what is next for them. Zen cone time. We are walking up to Comme des Garçons. This is one of only a few sub-labels under the Comme des Garçons universe umbrella that Ray is directly responsible for designing. And of course, Comme des Garçons mainline is the central piece. The runways here are Spartan. Nothing is here that doesn't need to be here. There are lights, professional, excellent lights. There is a runway, or at least space for walking. Ray does not come out at the end. That's unusual. They do not do a flood, a review of all the looks a second time. That's unusual. Nothing else. It is brutally simple. In nearly every conceivable way, this company sets itself apart from not anyone else in the industry, from any other fashion-related entity in human history. This is the fun day. The really difficult one is when we're going to be writing the review that you'll be seeing in a few seconds. That'll like take me 2.5 working days of like tearing my hair out. Dani just said it's going to be a long day at the Long Day Factory. Once you start digging into the lore behind Comme des Garçons, you'll inevitably find stories of Miss Kawakubo inspecting spaces very particularly for retail or for runway. I am told that she is unbelievably particular, which is why all the Comme des Garçons stores are so extraordinary and why all of the Dover Street Market locations are so exceptionally strange. But this time she was able to find a space that framed her runway looks just extraordinarily in the pictures. I mean, that support beam just shoots through the photo and gives it a really good energy. In the show itself, the first thing that we all notice is the change of materials. The burlap and the doily style lace really set this season apart. We can see these dominating the landscape in a few different looks. And it's very strange that these pieces are meant for spring. But here is what I think is going on here. A key part of clothing design is considering which textile is best for a given situation. One of the most common situations is the inside of a coat versus the outside of a coat. So the inside of a coat, for example, will need a lining, and the lining needs to have particular properties. You're gonna run your hand through the sleeve as you put it on. It's usually made of something like viscose, which is slippery. It makes it where it's not gonna pull too hard on the shirt that you're already wearing. It's gonna make the ease of putting it on and taking it off easier. And then the main fabric for the outerwear can have all of the insulative properties. It can be warm or it could be scratchy if it wants to. So in this show, many of the inside fabrics, the lining fabrics, were fighting to be seen. You can see here how the scratchy, uncomfortable burlap is the outside, but then we can see more delicate, softer material bursting through, like the fuchsia-colored material has been shoved on the inside of the coat for too long, and it now insists that the pink lining will see sunlight. Or like this one, where the white lining fabric has broken through in such a strong way that it creates a visual line all around the garment that's almost stronger than the silhouette of the outfit itself. We can also see this in this look where the crimson red cloth underneath is shining through the lace such that the whole look takes on a new color, this frosty pink. And that, by the way, is sort of a blown up model of what cloth does normally. A fine, well-made cloth from the past would often be made of multiple different colors of yarn that, when woven together and seen from a little bit of a distance, appear to be just a single color, in this case, green. But this large-scale version of that optical principle almost seems so obvious that it could be an example in a children's color theory textbook. A lot of the looks kind of force a question of continuity, like where does one thing end and another thing start? We can see that here with this lace where there's this imposed border that cuts straight up the middle. It forces these distinct patterns of lace to slam up against each other. Likewise with the wigs, this strange texture that Comme has been so fond of recently, of this unevenly spun cotton candy or building insulation or something else. You tell me, what does it look like? Anyway, there's a question here as to whether or not these pieces are part of the wig or part of the runway look. And of course, there's often a question of where the body actually is inside of any of these pieces. And I'm not asking this to make fun of anything. It is a part of looking at this collection. Do you think that you could recognize if one of these looks was upside down? You could for some of them, but for a lot of them, I don't think I would be able to clock it. Andrew Bolton, who is one of the best living fashion writers on earth, he's the chief curator of the costume collection at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and the adorable husband of Thom Browne, wrote an outstanding book about Comme des Garçons when he curated the exhibit that honored Rei Kawakubo. Actually, I have that book. One moment. It is toasty in this room. This is my extremely well-loved copy of it that I have taken all over the house with me and read 60,000 times. This is still one of the best fashion books writ large ever made. Anyway, in this book, Andrew Bolton is able to talk about Rei Kawakubo's entire body of work in terms of binaries, one thing and the opposite of that thing. So there's already a long history of Comme des Garçons exploring the binary of inside and outside. One of the very first analyses on this channel was for a Comme des Garçons en plus show where blazers were purposefully designed inside out. But this theme goes way farther back as well. Rei Kawakubo is generally considered to be the founder of the deconstruction movement in fashion, where the clothes have exposed hardware, linings, and construction so the viewer of the clothes can think on and appreciate how the clothes were made. And the deconstruction tradition in Comme des Garçons, or just anybody, is one of the most well-trodden paths of contemporary fashion. But this example feels angry. Bright reds and pinks under doilies and burlap. I don't know if I can explain in literal terms why this feels angry, but the feeling certainly exists there for me. Finally, there were 3 looks that emerged at the end that felt like a straightforward continuation of the looks in the main part of the show. But it was the headwear that really set this section apart. I can't play the music for copyright reasons. The music combined with the headwear gave this part of the show the uneasy feeling of an imminent ritualistic sacrifice, a frenzied, confused killing for some frenzied, confused god. It was so ominous. It was incredible. Okay, here we are. I'm excited to say this is our first time ever covering Celine. And we did like the collection, but this review is going to be pretty long because we need to contextualize these clothes, and it's worth looking at that context. We are thrilled to be seeing Celine as it evolves away from Hedi Sliman's autocratic tenure. With his departure, a swarm of the fashion press returns to cover Celine, once known for children's luxury shoes. Did you know that, by the way? I had no idea. Children's luxury shoes. Who'd have thought? Most conglomerated houses, if we're being totally real, they exist entirely to sell shoes and bags and fragrances. That's kind of it. But what I appreciate about Celine is that they have always made ready-to-wear a top priority. Since Daniela and I are so obsessed with clothes, it is always so nice when clothes are not just an afterthought at a company. It is a priority, and they make it clear that it's a priority. Celine making desirable clothing is not news to anyone who's already in the Celine cult. The majority of those people knew even before his public announcement that Michael Ryder was the most qualified designer for that job, having previously worked as the design director of ready-to-wear during Phoebe Philo's legendary era at Celine. You know, back before Hedi Sliman got rid of the accent aigu. There's actually this incredible picture that we found of Michael Ryder working on one of the most legendary dresses from that era, the Yves Klein dress. It is so cool that now the man who has so much experience with this house gets to put his own spin on the legend. So off we went 40 minutes away from the center of Paris to the St. Cloud suburb, and were welcomed at this insanely gorgeous public park. It featured freshly grown florals, fountains, impressive architecture, and a beautiful, crisp breeze. The weather that day was unbelievable. Like all LVMH mega shows, blankets were passed out for people who needed them. Celine water bottles were available, and the set was an absolute vision with this insane temporary structure that looked less like an awning and more like a James Turrell skyscape. On each seat was a pillow for the guests to sit on, embroidered with their initials, and more impressively, filled with French lavender. And we definitely kept these. They still smell great. Celine does an incredible job aligning itself with the less ostentatious, quietly beautiful parts of French aesthetics, mirroring their elevated but simultaneously down-to-earth clothes. Does that make sense? Like, Dior and Louis Vuitton would want to spadazzle everything in sight, but Celine makes clothes for real life. Luxurious clothes for real life. Celine wants to make your favorite garment that you've ever owned. Ryder finds himself at a house where many contemporary greats have come before him, and along with that, the audiences and customers of those designers. Michael is seeking to maintain those audiences by creating a world that's able to accommodate those customers while simultaneously expanding the Celine world outward. And if I had to describe what it is that he's going for in a sentence, I would say that this is an eclectic lineup of characters that are wearing a Parisian take on American sportswear. Sportswear is this when I say sportswear, I'm referring to this special time in history where we realized that it was possible to wear more casual and comfortable clothes because people had enough leisure time finally to be able to do things besides just working all the time, right? So we're more talking about skirts and shorts and sweaters in this context when we say sportswear. We are not talking about basketball shorts and yoga pants. I think this shirt would be considered sportswear to like a 99-year-old woman. But Celine, the company, really became itself in the 60s by embracing that definition of sportswear. We know, of course, that Americans love and refuse to not wear comfortable and utilitarian clothing, and Michael Ryder seems to have a healthy appreciation for that as well, because ultimately, what the fuck is a kilometer? We are breaking up traditional uniforms, starting with military jackets that become micronized peplum tops featuring epaulettes. And the service dress shirts actually also feature epaulettes. Other uniform ideas are present, like rugby shirts and varsity knits here as well. And I love that within this casual environment, we also find multiple looks that feature tails. And this isn't some, slightly longer jacket with a tall vent. These are full-on tails, like David Beckham getting knighted kind of tails. And in a rare stroke, all of these old-timey elements are believably updated here. Like these modernized and sleek jabots and these couture-esque bubble skirts. And this is actually a good place to tell you that a lot of these pieces will be produced by Celine's team for some of their elite couture clients. And that, by the way, for them means that the folks in the atelier at Celine who made the clothes, they will fly all over the world to wherever the VICs are, do multiple fittings, and actually tailor the clothes to those clients. You would never guess it just by looking at runway images. Let's look at the specific pieces. This look features a skirt embellished with black wooden beads. It looks simple, but it takes 66 hours of work for 4 artisans to completely fill this entire handcrafted Como silk skirt with a kilogram of beads. This leather jacket requires 60 hours of labor. This micro jacket requires 90. All that over-the-top care and attention to the quality with these pieces, and yet you could easily wear all of these clothes to a casual brunch with your friends. And I love this idea that it's couture that recognizes that ultra nice things don't just have to be for super special specific occasions. And frankly, you just can't find that at most couturiers. Like, they feel like their job is to provide you with the outfit that you will wear to the Ambani wedding or something. It feels as though Celine is saying to their audience that dressing casually and for daily life should not be given any less importance than what you would wear to a big event. After all, every day is all we got. A special occasion is very special, but you will only wear that piece one time. Taking that proposal seriously enough to make it a couture offering, to me, is extremely cool. Michael Ryder is trying to reach a wider audience. That was evident in his first show, where Brian Malloy's thoughtful styling gave Celine a way to connect with people in these little ways. The styling is where the eclecticism really shines, with puka shell necklaces and moto helmets and straw hats and cropped gloves and beads and scarves everywhere. If you're a fashion person, those styling decisions are really just a brief list of power moves you could easily embrace on your own. This is reinforced by Celine's invitations, which, like the invitations in the first show by Michael Ryder, feature a beautiful scarf matched in color to the person they were inviting. It seems that this styling concept is so front of mind for the brand that encouraging the attendees to play around with it themselves was decided to be the single best way to bring them into the mindset of the show. In this case, Daniela's was green, mine was gold. Pretty apt. The t-shirt does belong to Daniela, so y'all got it right. Eclectic is not easy to do at all, by the way. I would actually say that there is no other brand on the Paris calendar that is even attempting to do the eclectic look, because it is so fucking hard. It requires a lot of instinct and trial and error and rigorous editing to achieve this effortlessness with so many different puzzle pieces, which is what makes the return of the luggage bag such a triumph in this context. I mean, folks, she really is that girl. I love all versions of it. The flat, the suede, both the normal and the smiley versions. This bag is awesome. It's taking a staple from that Philo era that he was so deeply involved in and pushes it into the future. Outside of the fact that it works visually well with these clothes, the presence of that bag alongside the touches of Yves Klein blue all over the last 2 collections leads me to believe that Michael Ryder feels great about being at Celine again. I'm excited to where this takes us next. Surprise, we are on the left bank, and we are walking up to Enfants Riches Déprimés. This is our 6th ERD show, and we came in at a perfect time. ERD as a company is very different than the company that they started out with, and this is infinitely better. The general world that Henry Alexander Levy is building has been established at this point. We're not so much looking for everything to get upended. We are looking to get a tour of a new country in that overall world. As is often the case, the prediction that I make right before a runway show is completely wrong. Instead of being shown a new area of the world of Enfants, Déprimés, this season announced a change in priorities. We'll discuss those priorities in a moment. As we made our way into the courtyard, I nearly tripped over the first unsettling installation. 5 young women in ballet uniforms, hunched over in this seated fetal position that makes you either look like a petulant child or a fentanyl addict. Henri Alexander Levy, the founder and designer at ERD, is known for adding in installation performances on his runway sets that you can see while you're entering the space. In the past, he's had a small kid in tails drinking milk and keying a vintage Rolls Royce. Another show saw prisoners inside custom welded cages. Another show had a group of men silently playing mahjong on the runway. The list goes on. Something to note about the ballerinas is that they are all in slightly different fetal positions. Similar to the starting poses of ballet, we see first position, second position, third position of anger and hopelessness. It's a pretty good metaphor. Ballet is supposed to be the sport of grace and effortless beauty, but if you know any serious ballerinas personally, they've probably learned how to walk on fractured toes that'll never actually heal. Venturing farther in, there's more installations. One called Only Child Swing, where a little girl plays alone on an indoor swing whose seat is dense and fully rigid. Another installation is a child's coffin made of steel and glass. The bed of the coffin is latticed and decorative, which is to say it just looks very expensive. There were actually 2 of these, and the second one featured a child laying in it as if they had permanently logged off. Before a funeral service, typically there's a visitation and viewing of the body, and that allows family and friends, if they want, to get some sense of closure before the person goes away forever. So why would you need a casket that, when closed, allowed you to still see that body? In the past, that's been done if the visitation is being done for a very long period of time. Specifically in the mausoleum where Vladimir Lenin was held. After Lenin passed, I think it is reasonable to say that there were hundreds of thousands of Russians who really, truly did believe in their hearts that he was a good man, and they wanted to make plans to travel and see the body of their leader and get a little bit of closure, and the Russian government allowed them to do that. They made that possible with a few body preservation techniques and a coffin that included a lot of glass that allowed viewers to see straight in. So over time, the preservation of and the visibility of the corpse of Vladimir Lenin turned into a political tool. And I don't think it's useful for me to sit here and try to extrapolate what exactly that tool was being used for. But I think it is reasonable for me to say that chemically preserving a corpse for over 100 years of public display is being done for more purposes than just closure. I think Henri is inviting us to imagine, as terrible as this is, a powerful person who might have this tool-minded approach to the preservation of the body of a child of theirs who has passed. I think that when he uses symbols like this, Henri Alexander Levy is hoping that the sons and daughters of very powerful people all over the world will see this and think, yeah, that sounds like my fucking parents. Shifting gears here, Henri Alexander Levy has had a busy 6-7 months since the last show. He recently opened the second ERD store in Seoul, South Korea. You might already know that Henri is deeply involved in the creation of spaces for ERD. This was not a renovation of an existing building. It was the building of a brand new structure. There are more details in this thing than we could possibly get into in this segment of the video, but I mean, like the door, for example, is a historic Jean Prouvé designed door. Additionally, Henri started sculpting in bronze, which is a new medium for him. That piece was on display on the runway, a little stick figure of a man with an erection hanging from a chain above, which is likely a reference to another thing that YouTube does not love us talking about that rhymes with bottobarotic asphyxiation. And even besides all of that, he makes a daily practice of abstract painting, collage, and assemblage. But as a critic, I have to admit that the last 6 months have been a nervous time for me while thinking about ERD. Frankly, Henri seemed so busy with other projects that I was worried about the quality of the collection of clothes that would come as a result. I am thrilled to say that I was wrong. This is his best collection of clothes thus far, but it's the best for a very specific reason. Let's walk this out. It's good stuff. In the past, Henri's collections have been full of characters, junkies of all flavors. ERD has always been at its best with outfits like this one. Still one of my personal favorite runway looks of all time. After the runway is done, this becomes a great pair of ERD leather trousers, a crazy pair of well-made leather boots, and the now classic ERD Violator jacket. It's a really emotive runway look, and then it becomes ultra high quality product. But every ERD collection also has a number of extreme looks that more resemble art objects than clothes. A huge coat covered in loose plates from a Japanese airplane crash. A coat made of belts with heavy sterling silver buckles at the bottom. These are not bad, to be clear. They're great for runway storytelling. Nearly every brand in Paris does something similar, and as a general rule, Daniela and I like it. But I think Henri has now gotten his overall creative practice to such a place that he's getting most of his art for art's sake impulses out in architecture, assemblage, collage, painting, sculpting, and curating. So now that Henri's abstract artistic needs are filled through those other mediums, he may now design clothes that speak more powerfully to the wearer than to the camera. Clothes that might speak to others even more than it speaks to Henri himself. The way that many of these pieces speak to their future wearer is similar to excellent vintage items. It has that elusive trait of, I'll never find anything like this again. Let's take this belt. It appears on a couple different looks, and it's easy to dismiss it as a little styling detail, but this is a belt made in sterling silver. Because there are so many moving parts, each piece had to be cast separately. The plate, the hanging O-ring, the screws, these are screws by the way, which each were cast. The adjuster that I'm playing with there, that had to be cast as well. In luxury, especially for runway things that look like little styling details, it is easy for us to just automatically assume that the brand took the easy way out on it and that there's not really anything special to look at if you zoom in super close. But after we went to the showroom, we found out that a lot of these pieces were overly labored over. Like, for example, like what's something that's a little bit too labored over? There's a locket necklace at one point, and you've seen a million of these where you open it up and there's a little picture inside of it, and it's like, how do you even get a picture that small? Except with this one, there are multiple panels so that you can have a tiny photo album that's 1 inch by 3/4 of an inch, all cast in silver. There's a different locket that opens and closes to reveal a little booklet that comes with the jewelry. An earring that features a pocket knife that actually folds in and out. Additionally, Henri had to get a tooth removed this season that was saved and then sent off to the silversmith, cast, and then added to a necklace. Even the little flashes of silver on random jackets like this one, those are all custom cast pieces. The studs apparently had to be custom cast because of the extra little bit of curve that they have near the top. Maybe not as labored over, but the cherub in this pin is smoking opium. The belts are one of the strongest money-making categories for ERD after their t-shirts. This season, they forewent the typical studded belts for some woven leather belts, and even here on the belt loops of a pair of leather trousers. I'm surprised they didn't weave the cod piece on these. This piece was the women's wear highlight of the entire collection. Covered buttons, lacework, beautiful silk crepe, and even outside the specifics, this garment on an emotional level is pretty overwhelming. Even crazier, there's boning that's been worked into the back of the garment near the shoulder blades to give it a little bit of extra shape. It has the delicate appearance of a cicada shell. As a piece of clothing, it feels vulnerable. In the opening look, there's a strong military feeling to the garment, complete with the assemblage piece that Henri made using photos and a vintage ammunition box. Here, the silver buttons, the red piping throughout, and the dense, heavyweight linen material distinguishes this jacket in particular. Similarly, there's a coat that's later in the show. It's incredibly easy to just gloss over, but it's a great example of how ERD is turning its focus more towards product. This is made of a dense, heavy silk, and there's a double collar. There's a band collar that you can see here and a second small collar in a tonal black satin. This jacket has a silhouette that is nearly impossible to find for men. The strange collar basically forces the wearer to button all the way up to the neck, and it gives you this really rigid look. It's a great example of a garment that's built for the wearer instead of a screen. The rare shape, the unique hand of that textile, and small details that will last so much longer than a single Instagram post. I fucking love this jacket. As I looked at the feet throughout the entire collection, I was reminded of the scene from Succession where Logan is asking all of his out-of-touch, wealthy friends and family what a gallon of milk costs. No one can tell him because they don't know. And he screams, "I am surrounded by silk-stocking fucks!" Shifting over, ERD has always been very interested in the idea of how you can distress a new garment convincingly. That honestly is what makes their graphic t-shirts so coveted. Like, I guess you can buy the Enfants Riche Fugazi off of one of the scammers on Grail, but if you want to understand what the hype is actually about, you got to get the real ones or nothing at all. That same obsession with distressing extended to a special project they did with a denim jacket this season. This is a completely new, fresh from the studio jacket. The buttons are oxidized, and the hand of the material has that crusty, broken-in feel. I held it. It would be difficult to distinguish this from an original historic miner's jacket. These brand new white pants are another example. The repairs are partly done with the same fabric of the pants themselves and partly done with this ribbed fabric. The placement of all of this distressing is pained over. But then when you back up, honestly, it looks like you found it on like the floor of a barn in Kentucky. This sweater has an elegant little turtleneck knit collar, very expressive detail there. There's also the stripe here and a graphic that's worked in that's part of Henri's ongoing tribute to tragic outsider artist Henry Darger, the protector of children. The showroom visit this time was very illuminating. I could honestly go on about this forever, so I will cut myself off at leather jackets, which is a category that Henri has improved upon dramatically this season. When the topic of incredibly cool guy leather jackets comes to mind, usually we're thinking of a cropped, super high armhole, skinny arm perfecto leather jacket. But having a jacket like this on for more than 20 minutes is uncomfortable to say the least. Henri makes a point to cut his leather jackets such that you could essentially live in them. They're not meant to be the final touch for a little photo shoot. They're meant to be something awesome that you can wear 5 days a week and occasionally fall asleep in. If you want to dive into this much more, we have a brief but excellent interview with Henri that we got 90 seconds after this show wrapped. That, along with one extremely long interview and 2 other short ones, are available only on our Patreon. I am very proud to say that we are the only publication that has done good interviews with Henri Alexander Levy. And yeah, they're worth watching. Go sign up. One of the only brands in Paris doing sex correctly. One of the only brands in Paris doing futurism correctly. It is time for Courrèges. The set dressing of these shows is unmatched, incredibly cohesive, and the cut of the clothes is outstanding. Courrèges is one of the brands that we get the most excited about, and I don't know. If you're not paying attention to them, I don't know what to tell you at this point. Courrèges is this channel's skimpy brand of choice. As part of the invitation, everybody was given a pair of sunglasses that you were meant to wear to the show. Because as the show progressed, the lights inside the show got brighter and more powerful to replicate the hellscape that we will soon all be, actually real life living in. It's climate change, but sexy? Watch, somebody is going to be like, climate change is not sexy. We're trying to cope here, guys. While there are some more conceptual kick flips, like in the last few looks that feature sun reflector shapes built into the clothes to enhance your tan as you move about your day, this entire collection felt like a deeply meaningful proposal to a very possible future by the talented and often overlooked designer Nicolas de Felice. In that future, everyone still has their daily responsibilities to bop around to, except now we live in endless summer, so we're all wearing bikinis under our clothes, the loose strings now creating a new way to accessorize your jacket. What changes in this hypothetical future is that there are no suits to work anymore. Everyone is always in a halfway state of undress. And that seems to be the uniting force of the collection. Jackets give you the option to wear them halfway while keeping your arms exposed to the breeze. Felice executes some of the best gestural design in fashion at the moment. We remember that gestural design just refers to clothing that takes into account how people's bodies will interact with it. Like these tops that look like Felice stopped time while you were taking off your shirt at the beach, and we're all left with this half undressed, beautiful top shape that's cut to perfection. Even these gowns are halfway undone to a 50s style high hip one-piece swimsuit. And just, this is so stupid. Reporting live from the brain of a straight guy, this cut of dress is what makes us say, wow, I hope she's nice to me because she's perfect. I actually fell in love with Daniela when she was wearing a very similarly cut dress, and it's so cool that she is very nice to me. But for real, fellas, you gotta do your due diligence before you risk it all. Back fully on track, you can also find these one-piece swimsuits replacing bodysuits in a lot of applications in this show. And that's a very easy, seamless switch. I already know countless women who do this. Many bodices, including the bodysuits, are inspired by Andre Courrèges' open side dress, except now they're less structured and cling to the body. One even featured a beautiful drape at the back to assist with airflow. And damn it, I find that to be it's the cuntiest fishing shirt I've ever seen. We're having fun. It also could resemble sails, which brings us to the opening looks of the collection, which were so good. So much to talk about here. Felice has done face coverings before. That's not new to his design language. But these are my favorite iterations so far. First off, we're going archival with the shape of the hats. These are a reference to an Andre Courrèges design that was worn most famously by Audrey Hepburn for the movie How to Steal a Million. It's this shape that developed during Andre's career to have a slight brim, which you can see in this iconic photograph. These kind of almost started looking like jockey helmets. It's an Andre Courrèges design crossed with a beach staple, crossed with a sail, crossed with the now viral Chinese sun protection trend, which is designed to cover your face and, frankly, as much of your skin as is humanly possible. I really hope that the Chinese market picks up on this in earnest, because imagine looking like this, which is fine, when you could look like this. Get out of here. Do Nicola's one. All the ideas came together and it ends up looking really good. References aside, I just like how this looks. We mention it every review, Mr. Felice does not allow the Courrèges team to recycle old patterns. If they're inspired by an old Courrèges piece, they got to recut that pattern entirely. That way of working forces newness for a brand that is all about the future. And that's best seen in this look in particular. Here is its mom from a few decades ago, but you can see that the belt buckle detail makes its way to the shoulder straps of this dress. But the mini belt buckle actually reinforces another major theme in this collection: melting. Cuffs that are made of plexiglass gradually start to melt over the course of the show, seemingly almost melting entirely off the model's arm in some looks. We can see that, right? The earlier versions of it are very strict and definite in their shape, and then over time it starts to look a little more like melted ice cream. Back to other melted themes, waists are cut exceptionally low, slinking down the body, cleverly visible with the addition of these belts with small buckles. When you make a garment out of tons and tons of these belts, they begin to soften and droop down, creating this absolutely gorgeous fringe effect. My favorite being this orange version that's glossy and in color looks almost like a sunburn, right? This is the single strongest show by Felice at Courrèges, specifically in execution, which looked more polished than ever. This collection is about our shared future of a permanent summer. And I guess in that way, it is the most spring-summer collection of all time. I am thrilled, as always, to bring you a conversation between myself and Albert Kriemler of the outstandingly underrated brand Akris. As always, we begin in Albert's showroom in Paris, where the final fittings and model castings are already underway. Albert begins by showing me the piece of art that guided his hand this season, a screen by Leon Polk-Smith. Please tell me about it.
This was the type of major piece in the exhibition. And I love this minimalist approach, but also his sensation for color.
Well, I would love to see what you're particularly proud of here.
You know, first of all, this definitely is the color which I transported in each category. And you know, this is my double face fabric, which really works. And we have done all these colors here. This is wool. This is wool double face, but it's just fantastic. And then it was exciting to get all these denim shades. You know, this is also a type of a today's day. You step in and you walk out, you know. But then it's this beautiful denim,
it's really
which
soft
I
denim.
always do, with little lycra in it. And then I said, I really exercised leather. You know, here you can explain. This is a little jacket, and we have the pant. This is 0.6, this is 0.7, this is 0.4, you know.
Man,
so
this is very lightweight. This has got
it's a big shirt.
Shirt.
Yeah. And then here we have done a leather treatment, that's cherbo leather.
Yeah, I always mispronounce it. I've called it chev. It's just a goat leather, right?
Yeah, it's a goat leather, but treated with
the pebbling.
Yes. And then I think you know my proven organza Panama. I started in the poppy color season, but this has been a proven summer article, and you know, and I think this is what you want in lightweight clothes for summer.
This is the one that I see the most on women who attend your shows. This very like ghostly fabric that almost seems to levitate around their bodies.
From this embroidery to knitwear, oder?
Okay, so it's the same idea. This is embroidery. This is knitwear.
Yeah. And then we have the most important lace is this, oder? This is the wave, the St. Gallen Guipure, but I mean, we never had it so soft and so modern. It looks like leather, no?
It does. And it's what is this made of?
Yeah. This is Guipure, this is St. Gallen embroidery, as I would always do it. But let me show you that look.
Oh, St. Gallen.
Can we see this look?
Yes.
You see this, I really love. It's my favorite. Thank you.
And this is the lightweight leather shirt?
Yes. You see, this is one of the knit dresses. It's cool, oder?
Very beautiful. That has beautiful movement to it.
Yeah. I love it. It's two totally separate layers, you know.
4 times without.
Look, what I love here is also the mixture of her type of serious pantsuit, which is connected with that casual type of jeans shirt to wear over. When she walks the city, she's cool, although she has protecting. She's protected from wind but I think it's how women want to have that sportiness today, oder? And then you have, I did the print also out of the paravent. They will be quite spectacular summer.
It's beautiful.
You will see this. I have built this for the set, oder? That will be standing in the set.
Yeah. Albert, this is incredible.
Thank you.
Thank you always for being so transparent with us. Yeah, really appreciate it.
Always great to see you.
Yeah. And then it was showtime. All the models got dressed in their vivid clothes, and we enjoyed some of the best pattern cutting that I've seen from Akris. The brand has a love affair with trapezoids. You can kind of see them everywhere. And I loved how the trapezoids guided the pattern cutting in these jackets specifically. Translucence is one of my favorite elements of the collections at Akris. Always tasteful, always refined. They're somehow able to imbue them with this ghostliness. I have never seen such sophisticated clothes for the beach in my life. But for how nice these textiles are, I'd highly recommend not wearing them there. But hey, what do I know? At the end of the day, you should wear your clothes how Albert wants you to, which would just be whenever you're gonna do something purposeful. The time has come. Best in their weight class. Let's go to milk a fucking lime. We say best in their weight class because for the size of company that they have, Nico and Julia have done an outstanding job. They're incredibly creative. The ideas are simply executed and excellently executed. And last season, the clothes were so obviously excellent that they ended up selling runway pieces to people who just reached out to them randomly online. And this will be extra fun because we're going to be working with an extremely tiny showroom again. We believe strongly in the work that Milk of Lime is creating right now. If you'd like to hear more amazing insights from Julia and Nico, you can watch the entire interview on our Patreon, along with another extended interview with Julia and Nico. They are both at their best when they are speaking about the details of their work, and you would do well to listen to them if you want to be a designer or have a deep appreciation for design of any kind. You can watch those on our Patreon, along with dozens and dozens of other interviews with designers. I know, of course, but if you both could please say your names and what you do.
So I'm Nico.
And I'm Julia.
And together we have the label Milk of Lime.
So as always, y'all have clothes, which are incredible. I'm actually a really big fan of your clothes, but I know that the thing that a lot of people are drawn to with you is accessories, and we did a bag this season. Can we start with that?
So yeah, this season we had a bag kind of inspired by like medieval pouches. We kind of decided on like super heavy hardware.
When I thought about using it, actually, I wanted something that looks like a pouch but doesn't open fully. So it's never flat and your stuff would fall out. So it's not a perfect half circle, but the shape is a little bit different. So you can open it, but it looks like a boat. Like this is the end shape it can get. And this little ribbon or like band that goes around also prevents and gives some stability and a little bit of a floor. So you can still, you have the softness of a pouch, but you still have a bit of structure to give it more body.
Very cool. Nice. And I love that with stuff like this, with designs like that, there's never like a default way of it sitting. There's always like, it's always going to have like a little bit of organicness to how it closes and like how it sits and stuff.
We always like this thing of like covering garments in mist and creating kind of weird colors that you can't really describe what they are. It's a vintage fabric, a lace, and then kind of a mist over on top.
And the vintage textiles came from where?
Somewhere in our basement that like we don't remember where they came from, but we will deliver them to the stores and they're all gonna be like different textiles.
Yeah, the order is the same, but I feel there is, like especially with the smaller boutiques, there is a sort of a relief that they don't have to buy 5 of the same, but they can have 5 styles, and we can already say, okay, it will be a different vintage floral, a different lace, and a different sheer silk, but the making is the same, so the quality is always the same, and that is kind of inspirational and nice for both sides because we get to make more pieces, but they're individual for the stores.
We have like our blazers that we've been developing further. Like the whole collection is kind of more exploring our archetype this time. So it's kind of seeing what does our fictional character wear. One of these blazers that we really liked is completely double sewn and then cut open again.
Yeah, the black on black, you don't really see it, but it's a pomegranate motif, which is a very old thing, like pomegranate reappeared on textiles, and we found one that we really liked, reinterpreted it so we could stitch it in one go. So this is the blossom or the starting to be a fruit kind of pomegranate.
Oh, the cutouts then create a negative image of a pomegranate. Okay, cool.
Also, this is the same fabric, but one side is shiny, one is matte. We doubled it with this technique, then slashed it open, then distressed it. This skirt is very expensive because it takes a lot of time to make.
I love the woven part of the collar for this blazer.
I mean, it's separate. It's a carryover from the very, very first season we did. And they're actually cut-offs from our shirt production. So like whenever you cut a pattern, you have fabric left over. And then we cut them into bias strips and then weave them together so that you can buy them separate or with a shirt, and then you can wear them together.
This is plant dye.
Plant dye. What plant did we use?
We used logwood, which is a reddish wood when it's not used yet. And then you make a potion and it becomes dark blue, indigo. Sometimes it has like a purplish hue. And you have the shiny and matte. It's because you have silk and linen. So you have a protein and a cellulose fiber, and they do take the natural dye differently. So you have the shiny and matte.
These are literally 2 textiles.
Yeah, like it's a jacquard. So if you turn around this.
It's just usually jacquards are so raised. They're usually like very obviously jacquard, but like this, I'm not even I mean, I can feel it now when I run my hand over it, but yeah, it's so quiet.
So a lot of like very Milk of Lime elements. You have the raw hem. We really like to use the edges of the leather. This is also a pig skin, which is kind of like a very cheap leather, but we really liked the distressing on it.
The polka dots are gorgeous. This is a natural part of the skin?
Yeah, it's all the hairs.
Wow. Yeah, you can see it when you get up close. That's gorgeous.
We have a super extended collar shirt this time. It was just like to have something fun. Yeah, we have one with a double collar and then one with a single collar over there. And then we have the bird rings that are like a super big element within the collection.
Bird rings?
Yeah. So you know, like when you have doves and you send them, and you want to make sure if they fly away that they trace back to you. So we found a company that actually does bird bands. We loved these little bands they had, and then we asked an actual bird band company from not far away from us if they could stamp our logo and our season on it instead of some bird numbers, and they were a bit weirded out by it, but they did it.
Then they're numbered, so like every one will also be different.
Yeah, so from 1 to 150, and then you will have your individual number.
That's so cool.
So there's a lot of like ugly stuff out on the market in terms of like reusable bottles. You can actually use this one. There's a glass bottle inside, and it's wedge-shaped leather.
You can just
pull it. It's a cork.
You have a wooden plank, you make the leather wet, you have the object, so the glass bottle, and then you pull it over, you stretch it, fixate the leather, and let it dry, and then you make 2, cut it.
Very cool.
There's a lot of them here in the new jewelry. That's the first as well. We did with like a factory that has, like a family factory that has been going since like 1890.
Yeah, and what they do is they have a metal plate, which is their base, and then they really stamp it with force out of it, and that's how it gets this relief. Is that how you say it? So yeah, they're a little bit 3D, but relatively flat, and you can still bend or you can drill holes, and we have little movable objects.
But if people wanted to buy something that you maybe showed that was like, this is a one-off, or this is something that we don't make very many of, would they just reach out directly on like Instagram or email? How would they do this?
You can email us, you can like DM us on Instagram.
You're both managing all those accounts, so you would definitely see it. Okay,
yeah.
Great, cool. Okay, quick warning. We got to get this out of the way. This segment is going to be discussing a lot about ritualistic human sacrifice. It's going to get a little gory in some places, so it's a fair warning for anybody that feels a little sensitive or might be eating a salad here in a moment. Obviously, ritualistic human sacrifice is not good, nor does anybody in this, no one thinks that that's good. Richard Saturnino Owens has had a big ol' year. This is his 4th collection of the year, which is every year, but these have been especially cinematic shows. He has also unveiled the Rick Owens retrospective at the Palais Galliera, Paris. Rick himself directed that exhibition and even transformed the facade outside of the Palais Galliera, Paris. It used to look like this, and then it looked like this. And coming from Rick, this whole process of the exhibition feels a little bit like a meditation on death. Pharaohs, after all, in ancient Egypt would commission the decoration of their tombs to best serve them in the afterlife. What better way to serve you in the afterlife of modern living than with a retrospective of your body of work? And I think that's why the courtyard of the Palais de Tokyo is so frequently used to show Owens's collections. It's self-indulgently grandiose. In the Maison footage of this show, you can certainly see the clothes thanks to Zoom, but for context, this is what we saw out in the audience. We are very far away from the action. Everybody is. But that distance allowed us to get the booming, urgent feel that I think this runway show was meant to elicit. Owens Corp installed a massive staircase, bleachers almost, that led down into the reflecting pool. Owens has long referenced the glamour of old Hollywood, the era when a movie would call for thousands of real people as extras to get that perfect epic shot. We can see Rick's love for those films on full display as the models and their fully blacked out contacts stomp slowly down the staircase. The most impactful vision that I took away here was the massive heavy kiss heels stomping down into the water. This season's variation of kiss boots appear like they were tied up very quickly, as if you just threw something waterproof over your shoes and then tied it quickly because you had to march through some water you weren't planning to have to walk through. And as far as silhouette is concerned, there just really are not many designers that can compete with Rick here. He's good at a few different things, but I think that in 100 years, they will look back at his work and say that he was able to transform the human body through footwear. But the clothes themselves were mostly pretty delicate. The front half of the collection was full of lingerie that you could wear out in public without it being too scandalous. Multiple layers of delicate, transparent fabric. Later on in the show, we have the same intimidating football shoulder pad that we've seen since the pandemic shows, with a lot more grace coming from the jersey underneath. A new addition to the Owens Corp shoulder pantheon are these delicate little numbers. They're ethereal, but kind of repeating as if you're seeing them through blurred vision. Interestingly, these shoulders would immediately disappear, scrunched down if you were packed into a tight car. Folks, let's talk about human sacrifice. The Temple shows, this is Temple Women's, and of course over the summer we had Temple Men's. The Temple shows are named after Rick's exhibition, which is called Temple of Love, which itself is named after one of the biggest songs by the band Sisters of Mercy, which we have long known is one of Rick's favorite bands from his youth. But in this show, separate from that train of references, the word temple takes us back to the ancient Aztecs. Rick, of course, is half Mexican. He's paid tribute to his Mexican roots, most notably in spring 2020, the women's show. This time around, Rick has leaned into the Templo Mayor of the Aztec civilization for inspiration. The grandeur of the Palace de Tokyo courtyard, combined with the massive bleachers, is his brutalist interpretation of the Templo Mayor. Rick has never been much for one-to-one copies of anything, really. He always approximates the feeling of the original and then makes it again in his own vision. The Templo Mayor was the center of political life for the Aztecs, and it was the site of tens of thousands of human sacrifices. And it is worth it for us to dig into the details of how human sacrifice actually happened in order to better understand this collection. There was a belief that the energy inside of people's bodies was needed in order to power the essential functions of the universe, that things would actually stop working if you didn't sacrifice people. And interestingly, I read that they specifically believed that that energy was kept inside of the head and a person's hair. Human hair is also the connection for these pieces. These gorgeous looks are another installment in the ongoing collaboration between Rick and Stray 2K, the leather titan of London. It's like a full body tribute to the beautiful way that hair moves. And as always, 2K had to execute a lot of nuanced detail in order to achieve such a beautifully simple effect. This also ties into the ritual sacrifice to the Aztec god Xipe Totec, which translates into English as Our Lord the Flayed One. Dark Souls-ass sounding name. This is where they would sacrifice a victim and flay their skin off so that the priests could wear it as a tribute to this god. Moving on! Sacrifice continues to be on the menu, more so with these clothes as well. As with the model of the Templo Mayor, there isn't like a one-to-one comparison that I can make between these looks and any ancient Aztec drawings, but these ensembles do feel like they are being worn by a celebrated sacrificial victim-to-be. Okay, so yeah, to keep the sun powered, we got to put a lot of people to death. The specific ritualistic sacrifice that I am most interested in was the one to the god called Tezcatlipoca. For this annual ritual, they would find the healthiest warrior they could, someone who was the epitome of health and vitality. That warrior would get to experience one of the coolest words in English, apotheosis, becoming a god. For the Aztecs, that warrior would physically become the embodiment of Tezcatlipoca. The Aztecs would dress him up like a god, and they treated him like a god for a full year. That warrior would get to live one of the most privileged lives of that community. But at the end of the year, a crowd would gather at the base of the Templo Mayor as the warrior climbed the steps alone to the top of the temple where a group of priests waited for him. At the apex, the warrior was not held down or forced. He would give consent to the priests, and they would cut his heart out, thus completing the year-long tribute to Tezcatlipoca. Soon, they would pick another warrior, and the cycle would begin again. Isn't that strange? living like a god for a year surely does not make up for literal execution. Why would the warrior willingly lay down at the top of the Templo Mayor? In fact, we have some accounts from the Spanish invaders who tried to free prisoners who said that they, quote, indignantly rejected the offer of release and demanded to be sacrificed, end quote. I feel like that tension is softly referenced in the opening looks. This beautiful lingerie celebrating the model's body comes up around the neck to form what could be kind of a soft jersey shackle. It's not forcing the warrior god to do anything, but it reminds them about their destiny. The final two looks emerge in all white and all black, bearing a complete astrology chart for Rick. You can see his full name, Richard Saturnino Owens, his birth date, his birth time, and his birth location, including coordinates scattered around. Guess who drew that star chart? We learned via Vogue it was Rick's dad, his late father, who did it when Rick was born. It is Al, especially considering the pretty troubled relationship that those two had. And also so strange because everything I know about Rick's father would lead me to believe that he would hate astrology. This is just, it is a very weird...
Is his dad Mexican?
No, his dad is white. His mom is Mexican. And his dad was the one that insisted on him being named Richard, not Ricardo. Not a great guy, very complicated relationship. I don't want to paint him as only bad because Rick is not painting him as only bad, but
It seems like Rick seems to be trying to redeem his dad in the last,
he'll switch between saying something very biting about his dad and then saying something kind of sympathetic. I mean, his dad introduced him to opera and stuff, and so there's parts of his dad that Rick kind of is like, I appreciate that, but then there's other stuff that makes me so angry, and it just all like it's like everyone's complicated relationship with their family. It's some good and some bad. Very weird that the star chart is there though. We can see the general lines of what could be more abstracted star charts on the chest style lines of certain looks as well. Personally, I took all of this to be a statement about destiny. And speaking of destiny, the exhibit, the one that Rick directed, it's literally geographically at the top of these stairs. You're looking across the street and up at the Palais Galliera. A few reviews ago, I asked whether or not these autobiographical shows by Rick would culminate in Rick speaking about his own death. And here in this show, I think we have that statement. Rick isn't looking to get sacrificed, but I think he's hoping to approach his own death with the same calm dignity as the Aztec warrior god. And even if a cosmic Cortez emerged and offered a way out, I think Rick's hoping to indignantly refuse, offering his head and hair back up to the sun. I don't think I fully understand why the warrior god would consent to his own death. Like, I understand it's a death before dishonor thing, but that moment where he's got to look the priest in the eye and hand him the knife, just something about that doesn't make sense. And that kind of human experience doesn't really exist anymore. And there's something, I don't know, it's not romantic. It is certainly not brave. I don't know. There's something powerful there on the spectrum of human emotion and experience. I will probably be thinking about that for a really long time. Now that the death show is out of the way, here's to multiple decades more of Rick Owens. Dad's year of apotheosis isn't quite up yet. We made our way next to the Hotel de Ville in Paris. It's been the same location for Yohji Yamamoto women's shows every time since the pandemic. We've gone over this before, but there's a unique hush that comes over the audience before Yohji shows. Like, everyone comes in, they find their way to their seats fairly quickly, and then usually everyone just becomes silent. That's unusual because at most runway shows, people understandably are excitedly talking before the shows. Like, I personally am finding friends and scream laughing until the very last second before the show starts. But something about the Yohji show specifically brings out this serenity in people. And that was matched and emphasized this season with a card that was found on everyone's seats that said simply, Yohji Yamamoto encourages you to be present and experience the presentation with your eyes, rather than your screen. Let the moment, the movement, and the clothing speak to you. They are meant to be felt with your senses, not merely digitally recorded. And yes, I realize that everyone is going to make a comparison here with the Rose runway rule of no cameras whatsoever, including phones. I really think, though, that this situation is different. The centerpiece of this show was this connected fringe theme throughout the whole collection. Whether you're looking at pictures or at a video, this looks substantially different from what I saw in the room. It is just one of those ideas that is breathtaking when you see it standing in front of you, but that full impact doesn't translate accurately to a photograph. It's like trying to take a picture of a full moon. Like, it just isn't happening. If you have time, you should absolutely go witness this collection in person when it's delivered to their flagships or stockists. This is the best collection of clothes that I have seen from Yohji. Daniela and I were actually in full agreement about that. Perhaps the most important piece from this season was a strong reference to his past. The look overall is a lengthy coat with some beautiful shoulders, a hat pulled down very low, and a pile of red tulle emerging from the back, each end of the coat splitting over the tulle waterfall. This is a throwback to one of the most memorable Yohji pieces of all time. The fashion photographer Nick Knight took this photo a while back, and just to give some context, this book is not even about Yohji. It's about 150 different designers, but this image is so iconic that they used it as the cover. The specific season where this look originated was fall 1986, one of the foundational seasons for Yohji. A fairly simple ensemble in the middle of the show became the closing look of spring 2026. Of course, the most noticeable difference between then and now is the writing. I am afraid that I do not have much more for you in this way other than a literal translation. This translation specifically has been confirmed by the Yohji Yamamoto brand itself, but I would love any help from the audience to help understand why these words and sentences and references are put here and in this order. At least in the world of fashion, the spring collection signals a time when Noir Kei Ninomiya will deliver a collection of clothes that do not look like they are for spring. Like, seriously, this is look 1 from spring last season. This is look 1 from spring 2 seasons ago. Very spooky. This is 3 springs ago. Like, maybe it's for spring in that it facilitates more airflow. Either way, by comparison with his own track record, Kei Ninomiya really brightened things up this season. Much of the offerings were fairly standard for Ninomiya. His loyal followers love the body cages that he's had on offer for years at this point. We have lots of confusing pleats that warp the layout of the human form, and these are all standby Ninomiya motifs. The big change up this season is the star motif. There's a lot of examples throughout the show. It's impossible to know for sure where Kei pulls his inspiration from. He's always very off-put by that question, but I like to imagine him asking what would be a positive way to scream, "Please, I'm a star!" I haven't even seen that movie. Am I referencing this correctly? Yeah. Okay. It's so funny because I assumed when I first started attending these shows, like Kei Ninomiya, really the whole Comme umbrella, like Junya and mainline Comme des Garçons, I assumed that everything that came out of these brands was all supposed to be just deathly serious. You're supposed to hold deep reverence for what's going on. Nothing is meant to be cute or funny. But over time, I've learned to take the goofiness at its word at Ninomiya shows. There are absolutely moments of seriousness, things that are meant to make you reflect a little bit. We've highlighted those moments in our previous reviews. But this show was raw. There was very little new experimentation as far as the shapes that were introduced. But even at its most raw, Ninomiya's shows have a little bit of playful magic in them, especially because you're always kind of like guessing what he's trying to say. Like, honestly, this is so cool. In the showroom this season, while trying to film this piece, I couldn't find a way to film it with my camera without this rainbow appearing. Can you see it here? It's a little bit subtle, but it's definitely there. I can't replicate that rainbow effect elsewhere with that camera. Was this meant to be intentional? I choose to believe that it was. Every fashion week, between runway shows and showrooms and meetings, we try to make time for at least a few long-form interviews. Exclusively for the people that support us on our Patreon, we have a series about the most interesting jobs in fashion that no one ever seems to talk about. I am thrilled to say that the newest installment in that series is an interview with Atlas of Shows. These two are the brains behind the sets for some of the biggest runway shows in the world, including many of the runway shows that we are covering in this video. We have over an hour of conversation with these two about how runway sets help amplify the meaning of a collection of clothes. It is an incredible accompaniment to this coverage. Go sign up for the Patreon so you can watch that, along with dozens of hours of other interviews and exclusive videos. Back on the fashion bus, headed for the legendary Japanese restaurant Ogata Paris to see Mame Kuraguchi. Most of Maiko's career has been the designer trying to find her own voice through her home country's history of craft. Hey, in case your eyes are glazing over at this point in the video, craft is incredible. This is the place where the entire industry is moving. It would be best if you paid attention to a designer that before that got really big was basing her whole body of work on an ancient history of craft, as Maiko has done here. This season specifically, it's through a method of glass making that's native to Japan, along with memories of her own childhood at her grandmother's home in the snowy mountains of Nagano. As always, Maiko Kuraguchi had a room full of examples on site. All the specific examples of this glass craft displayed behind panes of standard display glass. Layered translucence means that we're going to definitely see a lot of lightweight fabrics, and it's honestly pretty cool that ice found its way into the inspiration for a summer collection. And as always, themes or a great concept for a show does not make that collection good. The designer still has to design excellent clothes to go along with it. There's some pieces here that demonstrate the theme seamlessly, multiple semi-sheer items layered in an ensemble. Personally, I saw much more natural ice in this collection than Japanese glass. This dress, while very simply cut, somehow managed to replicate the perfectly uneven surface of ice that is frozen on tree bark or a mossy stone. Similarly, on the final look rendered in black, I was reminded of the ground when it's below freezing but it hasn't snowed. Like when the pine straw, the pebbles, dirt, and the general debris of the forest floor is being held in place by frozen morning dew. Maiko has also gotten pretty ambitious with colors this season. Via a watercolor that I assume depicts a mountain range in Nagano, Miss Kuraguchi uses the pink and purple pastels of cutesy girlhood for her distinctly womanly clothes. Big highlight of the show for me was a quiet navy jacket with some gentle beadwork. The collar is a little padded and it takes on this beautiful shape. The seams on the shoulder are much narrower on the body to allow the poofed sleeves to take on an interesting shape that doesn't really draw too much attention, but also gives the wearer more range of movement and makes up for those narrowly cut shoulder seams. We know what I mean, right? Usually the shoulder seam would happen on the very edge of your shoulder, but hers is brought in a good bit, but then the poofiness allows for that range of movement. As always, Maiko Kuraguchi does not fuss with her designs backstage during the show. She stands to the side, placidly watching her own work. If I didn't already know, I would never guess that she's the one bringing this vision to life. And I think Maiko prefers it this way. Ellen Hodakova-Larsen is an up-and-coming designer who is trying her hardest to make it in this hyper-competitive industry all on her own. Her product is great. I've seen it in person. Hodakova is, in our opinion, the best chance that we have on the future of the deconstruction tradition in women's wear. I was encouraged to see a little bit more color this season. I found that added well to her gloomy, intense clothes. This season felt lighter and more like cerebral. I only say cerebral because of the book skirt and book epaulettes, but the collection maintained that perfect Hodakova dread feeling with the horse bridle harness holding a Prince of Wales check tailored mini dress. Hodakova pushes a lot of experimental ideas. I can't tell if these are clothing hangers or the arms that hold sheet music down on a stand or windshield wipers on cars, but we get some exciting looks with these. A thatched roof, a purse bra, bed sheets, belts, stockings, a wicker hat. Yes, that was a thatched roof. That's a thatched roof. I was sitting next to a guy who had never been to a runway show in his entire life. He was a prank YouTuber. It was really weird. I've never had prank YouTuber come up as an answer to, what do you do? But I leaned over and was like, huh? Check it out, a thatched roof. But you don't get that in your pranks. Besides the attention-grabbing runway-only pieces, a great number of the clothes create an optical illusion that elongates the torso and shortens the legs. For my fellow straight guys in the audience, that's the opposite of what women's wear typically does. Usually the goal is to find models who already have incredibly long legs and then kind of use the opposite optical illusion to make those legs seem inhumanly long. Some Salvador Dali looking ass legs. And I want to be clear, this is not warping of the body in an ugly on purpose way. It's proposing a cut of clothes that creates a really subtle subconscious sense of unease, which largely is what I look to Hodakova for. The leather looks are also really interestingly shaped. I wish we had gotten a chance to look at these in the showroom. When this collection hits stores, you need to go try it on. Their product is great. Zomer, 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 Zomer. You know who would be a great person to listen to say the word Zomer? Young Lean. I feel like if Young Lean was here and he was like, Zomer. Checking in on Zomer, where things are more colorful than ever. It's hard to beat the color allegations when there was literally a giant paint palette that models walked through, leaving behind footprints in Zomer's new shoe, these sporty Mary Janes. The clothes are cheekier than ever, like with looks that play on the trend of not tucking in your bodysuit and letting the snaps hang out. We see the crotch clasp detail serving as shoulder snaps in other looks too, and it's a really good reminder of Zomer's signature childlike approach to design. You tend to see those snaps most often used in baby bodysuits. More playful, these ties as pussy bows are so at home in the Zomer universe. Easy styling idea that anybody can do. And if I had to guess, I think Imru was probably responsible for these. This mermaid skirt that flares out to an umbrella is very funny. And the bags from last season, do you remember these? The bags that aren't? These are also back, except they still aren't bags. Now they're dresses. So that's something. We can't forget about this giant ring that did numbers on Instagram when it was captioned something to the effect of POV, me sending my boyfriend subliminal messages. Oh, and I nearly forgot about the giant claw clip and the giant belts. The large objects seem to be playing with the idea of scale, maybe about how everything around you seems absolutely enormous when you're a kid. The thing that comes to mind immediately is the scale that you see in the movie Toy Story. Double-layered skirts featuring some beautifully embroidered crystals underneath a denim skirt in this version. Those are cool, but my single favorite part of the collection is this dress, which comes in two versions. One made out of a plush red leather, and the other which features bias-bound seams on the outside of the dress as style lines. As always, pattern cutting at Zomer is a huge priority, and it comes out most prominently in these styles as well as these, where the godets that are inset into skirts create this beautiful movement that ends up being used in the shoulders in the opening looks of the show. Those bias-bound seams we were just talking about also sneak their way into athletic-looking garments as sporty lines. Someone correct me. Is there an official name for this? We have always called these sport lines. Is that correct? It seems like the team at Zomer this season was inspired by Margiela, what with the painted footsteps and the lining/inside of the clothes on the outside, and the brand tags that were painted on the different parts of the body, most notably at the back of the neck. It is just true that Zomer, like almost every other brand on earth, takes what they like most from Margiela's legacy and then reinterprets it in their own vision. As was said by the great Marc Jacobs when he was accused of stealing from Margiela, yeah, everyone steals from Margiela. And for a brand that prioritizes clothing design first the way that Zomer does, being inspired by Margiela really just means that they are inspired by the process of clothes making. If you're designing a collection, developing all the samples, you can see how that affection for the making part of it would come out in the clothes themselves. It's like the same idea as why so many Academy Award nominated films are about making movies. And like those movies, Zomer's been up for some pretty massive awards this year, and frankly, they should be. They continue to focus on the clothes first. Daniel and Emru have built a community that really believes in them. I've basically met all of Daniel's family at this point. They're wonderful people. And along with tons of other Zomer fans, we're all betting on someone who has extraordinary potential. The time has come for Marla Starr, Marie Adam-Leenaerdt. I don't know why that's her handle on Instagram, but I've always really liked how that sounds. It's like very smooth. The name of the brand is great too, but it's like Marla Starr. Sounds like a Sailor Moon thing. We've been fortunate enough to go to all of Marie Adam-Leenaerdt's shows. I think we literally went to her premiere in Paris on the calendar. And last season, her 4th show, she really hit her stride. Miss Leenaerdt is a student of Demna's Balenciaga. She worked in the atelier, then struck out on her own. And over time, she's more and more become herself rather than a student of Demna or a student of, old Margiela stuff. She's very much found her own voice with this stuff. And so now that we're on a roll, it's going to be really exciting to see where she is actually going to take this. Fashion people spend an inordinate amount of time at airports. The runway at Marie Adam-Leenaerdt was so effective in capturing that unsettling liminal space tone of airports. And the other way that all the ticker tape was effective was that it carved out a path that the models walked, allowing the audience to see all angles of the clothes this season. And I always really appreciate little innovative things that fit so seamlessly into the theme of the show, because it is often that I will be seated and have a good view, but then I'll have a question about the other side or the back of the look that I can't quite see. And if you are a small, talented designer like Marie Adam-Leenaerdt, this really solves the problem in a seamless and very cool-looking way. That's one of the reasons why we've begun to look forward to MAL shows. It's an explosion of ideas which feature everything from her signature deconstruction as well as glamorous, hyper-feminine parody. This is a dress cut to look like a standing neck bust wrapped with cheap black velvet with a gigantic costume jewelry diamond on top. Leenaerdt is Belgian, and I'll just take a wild guess that she is familiar with the Margiela show that featured a gigantic diamond. Leenaerdt isn't just borrowing for the sake of referencing a classic. She has contributions to it. Like here, where the shape of the neck bust dress becomes a column dress with large shoulders. We see the same cut of dress here as well that looks like the Margiela Stockman coat, but after like a ponytail facelift and buccal fat removal. It's yassifying the stock. So many of you who have seen the Margiela series on this channel know that Margiela designed the Stockman while he was learning couture draping. And the Stockman design actually featured a number of couture draping techniques that he referred to as sketches because they weren't complete. Marie, on the other hand, wants to dress the Stockman with different, unorthodox crystal dresses instead. That's contributing to this kind of over-the-top 80s glamour baubles sort of feeling. It is layering at the end of the day, but layering experiences a makeover with these polos and tanks. And much like early Margiela work, this is layering as a proposition. Even the shoes are layered in this collection. Lastly, my single favorite part of the whole collection is these socks, which feature a rounded hem that's so unnaturally perfectly rolled. It's actually really cute. I like this. It's adorable. For how much I liked these shows, and Marie very much came into her voice, I think, first starting last season, and this season is a great follow-up. The thing that really makes her a great designer is her product. You should look at it online, look at it in person. If you can find a stockist near you, it is worth looking at the product for this company. Bars? Found objects are one of the old standbys of fashion design. And I think it's so tempting to fashion designers because the effect can end up being very powerful when it's done correctly. You find an object that's familiar to everyone and then you recontextualize it into clothing. And the hope there is that the object is not just recontextualized. The hope is that someone sees themselves in the clothes and they see themselves in that new context. This season, Junya Watanabe introduced a great deal of found objects. That included umbrellas that made up the skirt of this look and then became unstructured in order to form the bodice of the dress. We have straw sun hats that form this very elaborate epaulets? Like, would these be epaulets? I don't know, like shoulder wrap thing. Maybe it's a wrap. Perhaps it's a shawl. Moving on, there's a series of hangers that are meant to hold up the garment as if you're seeing if it works on yourself before trying it on. And someone's like doing one of these in front of the mirror so they don't have to go through the effort of putting on a shirt. We have red pumps as a shoulder detail. Perhaps this is armor. We have hangers again here. We have lacy bras all over this look. We have a million spoons. We have forks used asymmetrically on both the inside and the outside of the garment. We have hangers again. We have a lot of wine glasses and hangers. One last time for anyone who did not see them previously. We almost had like a show within the show, because right in the middle of the looks, there were a bunch that deal with Junya's strongest theme in his whole body of work by far, topology. It's the use of surfaces and the ways that Junya makes those surfaces interact. That is a mode of design that Junya is completely undefeated in. And for anybody that doesn't know, we'll just take the Wikipedia definition here. Quote, topology is a branch of mathematics concerned with the properties of a geometric object that are preserved under continuous deformations such as stretching, twisting, crumpling, and blending. That is, without closing holes, opening holes, tearing, gluing, or passing through itself, end quote. That does sound like Junya, doesn't it? I have some unbelievable news about one of the classic standbys of our channel, one of the first interviews we ever did here. Meryl Rogue has been selected to be the new creative director at Marni. I realize there have been a lot of creative director announcements recently. You might have missed it. We are really excited about that one. I once heard in a casual conversation on a fashion forum like 15 years ago, someone described the original era of Marni as fun and whimsical and womanly, but never stupid. And I thought that was such an apt description of this. It has a seriousness to it, but still such an explosive imagination. Meryl's bright and bookish clothes are a great heading for Marni. With that, Meryl joins the Only the Brave group alongside esteemed industry colleagues like Glenn Martins and Simone Bellotti. It's pretty exciting. Meryl has risen to the occasion over the course of the last 3 to 4 years. Her eponymous brand has always been teeming with potential. Last season, Meryl was affectionately depicting the charming lives of weird girls who probably had too many pet rats growing up, and we really enjoyed it. This season, the focus seems to be on how to both layer and create interesting shape during the summertime, one of fashion's biggest challenges. Personally, my favorite parts of Miss Rogue's work come in this mix of tons of fabrics or a deep understanding of proportion or well-considered grandma flourishes. All of those are pretty emblematic of Meryl's work, but I want to emphasize specifically color palettes fear Meryl when she throws cohesion to the wind and embraces a mishmash of tones and colors that might not always technically match, but they always go. A lot of this collection speaks to getting out the door quickly, dressing in haste. Unlike a brand that prides itself on evening wear or boring basics, Meryl Rogue's proposals are chaotic. And I want to make sure that everyone knows that when I say that Meryl's proposal is chaotic, that does not mean that it is unprofessional or unfinished. I mean that the look, the proposed look, is chaotic. And the idea of embracing chaos as your everyday dress, that is interesting. And it seems to appeal to a pretty underserved customer. That reminds me a lot of the vision of Consuelo Castiglione, Marni's founder. Meryl Rogue has founded a knitwear company called BB Wallace that seems to be an outlet for her material and fabric obsession. Her voice will now be accessible to you through Meryl Rogue, BB Wallace, and now Marni. For those of you who do not know, Place Vendôme is not a coincidental location for this runway show. This is the center of Parisian wealth. This is where the Ritz Hotel is, Cartier is here, Dior, Van Cleef. The cap of Chanel number 5 is designed based on the shape of Place Vendôme. Arrondissement number 1, Sun King Square. This is where Matières Fécales chose to host their second runway collection, titled Hannah, after their corpse-painted co-founder. The audience for this show is unlike any audience in global fashion. There's a few celebrities that come through, a few underground legends as well. I think in 10 years, this may end up being another show in Paris where you'll have scores of fashion students waiting outside, tailgating the event, just trying to get as close as possible to the magic. I'm so pleased to say that a few days after this show, we got to catch up with Stephen and Hannah, the founders of Matières Fécales, in a fantastic interview.
I'm Hannah.
I'm Steven, and we're Matières Fécales.
So I feel like we have to get 2 questions out of the way so that I know for sure when I write this review later. Pronouns, please. What do we do?
She, her.
I'm he, they. I mean, for me, especially with gender, it's been a full kind of journey, but I guess I'm leaning into he these days.
Cool. And then the other question that I know we'll get in the comments is, you mentioned in love, so I guess couple, yes?
Yeah. Everyone's really curious about that.
Curious.
Like the fact that you answer my question while looking at her is, I was like, oh no, they're in love, I can tell. Both Hannah and Steven are high-level clothes makers. They are classically trained pattern cutters. They offer a line of demi-couture, which is actually going to be our focus for the majority of this review. These clothes are just stunning. So this was a very different show from the first one that you did. A lot more emphasis on tailoring in the first one, and then this one had much more couture processes. It's just couture, right?
I mean, I guess we wanted
We're calling it prêt-à-couture.
Because there's a lot of couture techniques, but it's actually, some of it was actually made in factories. It wasn't made by hand. I mean, maybe these big ones are, but a lot of those like couture-esque elements were in a factory made.
This was, to me, the big standout. Just because, I mean, the dress itself, but also the model was just working it the entire, and when she went up against the mantle and kind of like did her little thing, incredible. Tell me about how this dress came to be.
So we actually did the casting for all the couture looks like maybe 6 months before the show, even before the dresses were made or sketched. It was really like, let's find girls who can walk, who can give energy. And when Zora came along with her, she has this black, beautiful hair, and she's very like nymphy. You were so inspired, and you drew this dress for her in this pink to just contrast with, I don't know, it was really like made for her.
Yeah.
When I saw the sketch, I was like, oh my God, how are we going to do this? Because this shape is like quite difficult to achieve. And I hate
Petty skirts.
Petty skirts or like these thick crinolines.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is like so gross. So with our team, we had to really figure out how are we going to get this volume without having too much weight that this is going to like, tear apart. So it was quite an engineering process to figure out.
So I want to hear a little bit more about the casting. A lot of brands they love talking about it, but then when it comes to doing it, it's very ham-fisted and usually not executed very well. Yeah. And you two had actual meaningful diversity, and none of it felt like tokenism. So let's go through just a little bit and kind of talk about Nikki was a model for this show, and Nikki was outstanding and very elegant in this dress. Loved that.
I mean, this dress was designed for Nikki.
Yeah.
Same, all of the finale looks was really designed for each person. To go back to, the concept of diversity, I mean, for us, we live it. Even if we didn't want to be, we couldn't, because it's who we are. And, as, people, just walking to this showroom today, whether people look at us on the street or whatever, that's part of our everyday life. And someone like Nikki goes through that way more than we do, because for us, this is a transformation that we chose, but for her, it wasn't. And it was what she was born with. But at the same time, her resilience and her defiance to embrace her inner beauty and express that, I think, touched us.
It's really interesting to me. Nearly all dresses before the postmodern era had one goal, and that was very traditional ideas of feminine beauty. Then after World War II, we started very slowly learning that there were more options. Okay, so to speed it up, it's been decades and decades, and we are pretty open-minded about what a dress can be and what the tone of a dress can be and what beauty can mean in a dress, except for when you get into the world of extremely high skill level custom dresses, because then you just get right back to those traditional feminine standards of beauty. And that's good stuff. Daniela and I love the pretty princess form of beauty. I think it's breathtaking when it's done well. But Hannah and Steven are at least offering an alternative for someone who wants a piece that is expressive in a more cutthroat kind of way. But it's all still very serious clothes. Are the flowers all silk?
Yeah, so they're all silk chiffon, each petal hand dyed, and then some of them are burnt, and we were just having so much fun, even tulle integrated into them. So this was each rose actually I was stitching them, took me 1 hour. Me and Stylianos are doing 1 hour per rose just to stitch it together. So it's very couture, I guess.
And I was really pleased specifically in this interview that Daniela and I got a theory that we put into our first review of the Matières Fécales premiere show. We got that confirmed in this interview. I want to make sure that we get to the tailoring for this one specifically, because I have a little theory about this one. Could y'all just talk me through a little bit how this is tailored and sort of what separates this from what Anderson and Shepard would call like this is the standard blazer?
We took the blazer from last season, the Madame H blazer, and we kind of made it a little bit more feminine by, making this new kind of collar and having these very delicate hook and eyes down the front. And inside there's almost like corseting crin, which is kind of actually the same corseting material I'm using over there, but inside the blazer to give this Bombay, that's what they call it in French, Bombay kind of shape, similar to like a Dior bar jacket.
And it has concave sleeves.
Concave sleeves. And what I love is that all of our jackets always have a zipper. So you can bend your arm. I do my groceries in this, and all the edges here are hand kind of shredded, which I love because it just makes it this kind of contrast of something so perfect and beautiful in this silk, but then something kind of unfinished and undone.
And with this brand, I think it will always be the case that there's some excellent ready-to-wear offerings in there as well. What are the more commercial pieces that are kind of going out into the world for everybody?
Well, this one's quite funny, talking about identity and transformation, because this is me in high school.
Oh, that's great.
And this is the Never Conform t-shirt. So it's just a reminder about all of our values into a t-shirt about, you can transform, you can change, and there's something quite beautiful about that in a way.
You're how old? I'm 36.
I'm 30 now, so this must have been me at, I guess, 15. This is our favorite. This one is called...
This piece is titled Mon cul.
So you can see he's kind of bending over.
The zipper covers the butthole.
Very
tasteful. Very tasteful.
Very tasteful. But yeah, this is my favorite, so I can't wait to get this.
Very cool. Hannah and Steven are both lovely people, and they're wonderful at speaking about their own work. Go join the Patreon right now so that you can see the entire interview with them and dozens of hours of extra videos. Go check that interview out in particular so that you can watch my boomer ass actually work up the courage to ask Hannah directly why her face is painted white. Like, I felt like such a dummy asking that question, but it's like, I'm a journalist. If I don't ask this, never mind. Go sign up and watch it. Might seem obvious to some, but so that we all know and are on the same page, Dries Van Noten, the man himself, was in the audience, front row, for Julian Klausner's second women's wear show. Dries' presence at these shows highlights a unique experience for both himself and for Mr. Klausner, that of coexistence. There is a unique kind of public vulnerability that comes when a designer works for 38 years to build a vision that literally bears their name, and then must not only retire, but must sit front row and watch as their name and their legacy continues. That's a situation that creative leaders can sometimes not take to very well, because on the other hand, there could be the horror of watching your own brand get turned into a joke during your own lifetime. I can name 5 or so designers that has really happened to. It's a scary thing to think about. I'm pretty grateful that Dries had the foresight to put in the work to avoid this kind of humiliation. Well, reporting live from the team who got the video, Dries' first ever time in the audience a year ago brought him to tears of joy. which I'm sure was a huge relief for him. But that was one show. Now, every 3 months, Dries must come and sit front row, smile and cheer for his most trusted former employee. Having surrendered control completely, Dries knows that he must do this ritual now to continue to secure the legacy that he wants for himself. And to be honest, good. I often find it immature when designers make millions selling their names only to act unsupportive of the follow-up talent that they themselves often had a hand in selecting. I can respect the special vulnerability of this situation, and I respect Dries a lot for handling it gracefully. On the other hand, Julian Klausner wants to make his mentor proud. No pressure. And I think that Julian is now tasked to now live up to the challenge of creative directorship while meaningfully contributing change that is in line with his own vision. Julian should make his time at Dries about what Julian wants to make, not necessarily what he believes Dries would want to see. The only consistent theme of fashion in the 2020s is change. And like many other houses showing in Paris, the curve of that change can already be seen. This show in particular gained higher visual fidelity as it progressed, starting with muted tones that evolved into larger graphic prints in brilliant color, emulating a sunrise or a sunset. Julian doubles down on his coastal inspiration for spring in this show. His men's show in June created the beachy tone that we see perfected here through the sarongs and almost pirate-like silhouettes for men. As far as I saw, it was well received. I think the boys want to look like pirates. And now we're moving that inspiration into the women's show that examined surfing this season. A wetsuit served as inspiration with the curved shoulders and these narrow Bermuda shorts. You can see that wetsuit stiffness especially well in these. It's an idea that Klausner seems to have elaborated on from the men's collection as well, and I find it to be a truly great idea in this context. For all the stiffness, we're provided beautiful contrast with the caftan, another beach staple prominently featured all over the collection in various cuts and colors, all of which share this really billowy effect in common. Other contrasts make themselves known here too. Casual and formal being the first that comes to mind, as seen through oversized t-shirts with skirts and jackets with insane embroidery, paired with cabana striped Bermuda shorts, topped with a shoelace belt. Youthful and more mature styles are contrasted here, pushing a young woman into sophisticated but unstuffy clothes, and reminding older women that they can still very easily pull off more exuberant clothing regardless of age. Maturing, surprise, surprise, does not mean that you have to become invisible. While we see some of the signature DVN heels done up in crystals and this sunburst pattern, shoes are mostly pretty flat this season. 75% of the collection is wearing flat shoes. While this is definitely part of the zeitgeist for women's footwear generally, I love the style of these bowling shoes. They're so perfectly kitschy when wrapped in the same vivid tropical prints that were found all over the rest of the collection. Silk moire, peignets, ornate matador embroidery, the effortless hallmark print clashing that Dries Van Noten has been known for his entire career. All of these elements perfectly complicate each other. The kitschy prints weirdly add to the sophistication of these looks, this one in particular. All of the legacy houses right now are trying to find the route by which they can evolve without losing their more mature standby female customers. I think most of those houses would kill to have the juice that Julian Klausner has right now. It's making Dries Van Noten an exciting choice for women both young and old now. Not in 4 to 6 seasons from now when all of the other new designers have begun to settle into their direction. Right now. Julian Klausner is a fierce competitor in the industry landscape. I actually loved this show. I think that once this collection in particular is merchandised, it'll be deeply appealing to the Dries customers. We have a slight departure of theme this season. Thom Browne shows always have a cutesy little narrative to them, right? The Island of Misfit Toys is a Christmas classic that recalls warmth and being a child. Noah's Ark was a theme a while back where there were 2 of everything. All the Thom Browne shows are wrapped up in this once upon a time feeling. But this show was about aliens. And I mean, yeah, a lot of the Thom Browne runway pieces looks like a group of aliens consulted some old preppy catalogs and then tried to do like an assemblage of what maybe a human could wear, but then they got a little carried away, a little creative, took some license, and now they look like nothing you've ever seen before. The aliens did nail a few details though. The models walked with little ticker signs that read look 1, look 2, etc. And one alien was like a walking fabric swatch book at a tailoring shop. Like that big book of fabric swatches that they plop down in front of you so that you can select what you're going to have for your bespoke suit. In a very purposeful way, Thom is always tempting the audience to screw their face up and go, okay, this is too much, I don't like it. The reality is, though, that the runways give Thom a chance to cast his strange fever dream of an image, and it gives the Thom Browne team a chance to experiment with bizarre technique and construction. It's always important to note here that these are not the little experiments of a fashion student. Everything you see here are completed garments in luxury materials. And with Thom Browne, we always kind of have to acknowledge the para collection as well. Where I was standing outside the estate, there was a small staircase that led down to the outside part of the runway. And it's very common practice for a runway to have someone there to help the models come down the steps so we don't have any falls. Usually that role is filled by some good-looking 20-year-old guy that they squish into a rental tux. But only Thom Browne would insist that that task be performed by a model, because, like, obviously that guy is a model. But not only that, but that he be fully dressed as part of the collection. That is a thoroughness that you literally don't get that anywhere else. And as part of that, I don't want to get too inside baseball here, but you would regularly hire an outside PR company to help manage the door and the guest list, some other things. The whole PR team, they're not Thom Browne employees, and they were dressed in Thom Browne. Danielle and I we're friends with most of these people, and we've never seen them dressed for a show like this. They looked fantastic. So in the collection itself, besides the bedazzled alien helmets throughout the show, we have a beautiful little tribute to the first trompe-l'oeil piece that Elsa Schiaparelli released in 1927. And that is a great reference for this situation because Elsa Schiaparelli walked in the surrealist fashion tradition so that Thom could sprint. And that segues us perfectly into the best theme of the entire show, these outstanding ideas that created a trompe-l'oeil of a naked body painted. And if we look at the side of the arm here, that line running down is a seam, so we know that there is a netted sheer base that all this was built on top of. The painting is made up of cotton seersucker and wool that would usually be used for suiting. I wish this was some of the strongest looks of the entire week. I really wish you had been able to see it. I know. I'm sorry. It's
fine. I've just been dying to see it.
I know. Yeah, I'm sorry. And an even crazier one here that is a trompe-l'oeil of a male form, including a lenticular skirt. Never gotten to say lenticular on the channel before, but here we go, lenticular. You know, like when you have a Pokemon card that is shiny, we call that a holographic Pokemon card. So that is not the right word. It's not even close to the right word. When something is an optical illusion where it looks like one thing here and then you turn it a little bit and it's a different image, that is called lenticular. So the two lenticular images are of a striped standard skirt and then of hands covering the crotch. And the third iteration, this effect is performed with a series of layered sequins. It's hard to say for sure. I am guessing that this was probably one of the most time-consuming pieces in the entire collection. Incredible work here. It's gorgeous. There's a few more standouts in the collection. The dégradé beadwork on this yellow skirt suit is going to look incredible on whoever ends up being lucky enough to wear it. And speaking of dégradé, this coat is just mind-blowing. The whole thing is great, but if we zoom in on this section right here, I feel like this cropped image is a great depiction of what it is specifically that we go to Thom Browne for. Nobody else makes anything like this. And also, little bonus, the body of the coat itself is apparently made of a cotton crepe, and I have no idea what that feels like. Sounds fascinating. The show ended in a Thom Browne tradition of thanking his wonderful husband, Andrew Bolton. He's handing him the same little ticker sign that the aliens have been carrying, except this one says, "I love you," which is very wholesome. And I feel like Thom and Andrew set a good example in that way. Well, one time it was like Andrew's birthday. And then it was Valentine's Day. And so it was just sort of like, I'm so sorry, we'll go on a date later. At this point in the video, it should be no surprise at all to you that this is a season of firsts for Daniela and I, and that includes, I am so pleased to say, Lanvin by Pieter Copping. One of the oldest houses that continues to show Lanvin's history is one that you can look at to get an idea of how fashion was interpreted throughout the 20th century. Now, Pieter Copping has a chance to slowly build on the legacy of many other designers who have come before and find new ways of interpreting fashion history. He's starting with the bones of the house, created by Jean Lanvin, who pioneered the Art Deco look in fashion well over 100 years ago, and was in the trenches when the 20s look was hotter than ever. And now, in the new 20s, 100 years after Art Deco was originally created, it's back. It's more popular than ever. All art movements do eventually find their way into fashion, but we tend to be a little late. Fashionably late, of course. We only take it once they're ready. Like with grunge, we needed them to figure that shit out first, and then we could help improve on it, you know? Interiors and architecture have already been cranking out the Art Deco for a little bit, but Pieter Copping has actually come in to bring Art Deco into fashion a little bit faster than the industry usually catches up. Jean Lanvin, the woman, was working at a time when women were discarding their corsets and adapting the fussy beauty of the 19th century to an entirely new age, which is why it's so interesting that Jean was so inspired by the 18th century peignets when designing the classic robe de style, a dress that seemingly distills the spirit of the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries into a single garment. 3 centuries, peignets, fussiness, and confusion about what the future will hold, not derogatory. We were lucky enough to see a few of Jean Lanvin's original designs courtesy of the Parodi costume collection in Miami. We see a few modernized robe de styles in this collection. And by the way, waists are so varied in this collection, defined with belts, cummerbunds on both men and women, cutout waists, low waists. The waist has defined women's fashion so closely, and like the robe de style itself, the variety of waists find themselves perfectly at home throughout this collection. And like that variety of waists, or like variety of waist, the legacy of many past designers find themselves at home in Pieter Copping's Lanvin. Let's start with Claude Montana. It's a designer that actually really doesn't get talked about very much now. Claude was a storied designer in his own right. We see Pieter Copping adapting Montana's iconic shoulders along with other large and dramatic collars and lapels. I actually loved this belt in particular, which just comes right out of Montana's era. But while Claude Montana's era at Lanvin was a hit at the time, for most of us today, we associate Lanvin with Albert Albaz's ultra-successful, bright, color-blocked clothes, touchstones of which are seen all over Pieter Copping's collection. Pieter takes Jean's waist, Montana's dramatic contributions, and Albaz's simplicity, and ramps it up with his most impactful contribution: exceptional details and textures. Bows and flap ribbons, intricate 20s style beading and embroidery, miniature godets that create ultra dynamic movement, as does fringe and drapery, as do flared hems that add extra sharpness to your walk. Movement seems to come easily to Copping. Leather and fabric textures are just exquisite looking. The grain on this leather particularly is hitting me like a train. This fabric is really striking, as is this one, and the fabric on these, which appears to be created to appear like a stored and preserved vintage garment. It's a great reminder that time can be reflected in more than just the style of the clothes. And I get that some of these clothes seem conservative in nature, but these are not sexless clothes. Copping just understands what to reveal to make something a little compelling. Cutouts that call for no undergarments. Parts of garments that are laced together that imply that it can be unlaced, or covered buttons that line the vents of body-hugging dresses. Separate of all of that, I loved these headbands. And these are not just lengths of fabric, that were tied around the models' heads by the stylist. These are purpose-built, and I really hope that Lanvin develops these. I do not like messing and fussing with my hair. I wear a lot of hats and a lot of headbands. The design of this is flawless. I cannot believe this has not existed to this point. Hopefully this is like a big money maker for them, and it's going to be some shit that like Amazon like dupes, and that there's a shitty version of them. People are like, oh, I hate those things. They like don't work very well. And then you're going to get the real version and understand why they exist. Lanvin is early in its resurgence. This is only Pieter's second show. I'm really excited to see how this stuff develops. We are here right now at the Centre Pompidou, and I've asked so many people where I can buy tickets to ride the tubes, and people keep looking confused. I'm going to figure out how to ride the tubes. The Pompidou is closed, I think for like 5 years or something while they're doing a huge renovation. But lucky us, we get to go to big, beautiful buildings in France when we're otherwise not allowed to go to them, this time for the Issey Miyake show. In his tenure at Issey Miyake, Satoshi Kondo has gotten more and more experimental. Last season was by far his most experimental season for the women's. And it'll be very distracting when I'm passing my own demographic on the street. If you guys are watching right now, hey, what's up? It seemed like a lot of that experimentation was a result of the artist that he took inspiration from for that last season. The way that the design team handles how that inspiration moves into the collection is pretty unique to Issey. Hopefully we'll be able to get into that in a moment if it's relevant for this review. I'm interested to see if they keep things as extreme as last time, or if we kind of return back to the core of Kondo's design language. Fashion theorists often talk about this binary split between subject, that's us, and object, that's our clothes. And that subject-object binary is really interesting because while they both define each other mutually, the clothes are always ultimately in service of the person. This season, we learned via Vogue that the creative director of Issey Miyake, Satoshi Kondo, started this season by thinking about, quote, if garments became autonomous, if the body became an object, end quote. That reflects the official title, Being Garments, Being Sentient. You can even see a look that's quite literal when it has written on it, I am animated. So here it seems that the clothes and the models that they wear are in a symbiotic relationship where neither is superior. And while this may sound like kind of a silly prompt, this is actually a pretty common way of thinking for designers. Like, do you remember that challenge for web designers where they were trying to find the weirdest way of designing volume control? There's no meaningful practical goal here, like fucking obviously. But if you don't do exercises like this when you're a designer, your neural pathways are going to entrench themselves too deeply and you're going to get stuck eventually. Automobile designers do the exact same thing when they make one supercar that has no hope of going into production. In one of the opening looks, we can see the model wearing a polo dress. The specifics of the cut are about as unique as a person's identity. Here it's, heavy on top, and then asymmetrically fitted and then loose depending on where you're looking. But then on the back of the dress, you can see that the stripes are mostly lined up, except for right there, which I am taking to mean that it's like a birthmark of a living thing. Back to the animated look, we can see that the clothes have a relationship with their person, but you can tell the clothes also have a relationship with the bag. I think, folks, we are witnessing the first throuple on a runway, and you can kind of tell, like, if all three things are sentient here, you can kind of tell that the clothes prefer the bag over the person. Like, the person is kind of like the extra one in the throuple. Nobody wants to hurt anybody's feelings, but, we feel how we feel. You knew this when you joined the polycule. The top really does, though, make this kind of perfect bit of room for the strap of the bag to rest in. And the entire runway show is just a combo streak of ideas like this. Which one of these clothes has kind of an iffy relationship with their dad? This look features a collar that's in the right place. Collars are meant to frame the wearer's face, but the collar kind of has its own ideas. I would even venture to guess that the back pieces of this collar are attempting to frame the front pieces of the collar. It's a collar framing itself. Easy motif to identify here. There's a couple looks where the pants are a blazer. You can see that the blazer's pockets are at her knees, so they now act as cargo pockets, and the sleeves just kind of hang off and do their own thing. And in the latter ensemble, you can see the button placket of the shirt, which should be down the middle in a traditional shirt, has just taken up its own chosen family with the wearer's left arm sleeve. I'm really trying to humanize these clothes. That's what I'm supposed to do. I should have you like look through this to make sure any of these clothes might be like first-gen immigrant children or something. I personally really like when art proposes an alternate vision of reality that's like super weird and freaky, but where the viewer can kind of see like, oh, I see how people came to those conclusions, you know? If we ignore the binary idea of clothes and subjects being equal here, I also find that this collection is a bizarre but kind of timely statement about how people build their lives now. Like, for example, it's super common for someone to be vegan now. Yes, like I feel like every person in the Western world knows at least one person who's a vegan. Okay, being vegan requires an enormous amount of sacrifice and work. It's hard to do. But imagine being a vegan 200 years ago. People did it. People were doing it thousands of years ago, believe it or not. But it was so difficult. It required so much more sacrifice in the distant past. Now in the present, it's just a reality of modern life that a lot of people are living their lives on hard mode on purpose. Gigantic Funko Pop collections. I mean, people will maintain gigantic hedge mazes on their property. I mean, literally the room that we're filming in right now is Danielle and I's actual closet. This is the main bedroom of this house. We sleep in the living room.
Nothing to do in the crib except get dressed.
Get fly.
With a starting point like sentient clothes, there's always going to be a heavy representation of fashion's deconstruction tradition. Here we can see a suit look that's been fused with a shirt. We can see that collar going unused down the back and continues to the front, which has been mostly dominated by an inside-out blazer. But one of my favorite human clothing relationships in the whole collection is look 34, where the pocket system has gotten carried away. Like in order for I don't have an Issey Miyake blazer. In order for pockets to exist in clothes, you need a space for the pocket to live. This is the pocket. But these pockets have extended their storage capacity through the entire body. Like, do you see it? I think we're supposed to assume that the sheer black t-shirt dress is the main part of the outfit, but the red lining wanted to get a doctorate in postmodern pocket studies, so it just kind of kept going and going and going. This is reflected by the soundtrack by Jad Atui and Tarek Atui. Jad is the one performing here. Jad's body of work often uses extremely unconventional instruments to create these dense soundscapes. And I'm not trying to be obtuse when I say that, but if I say the word music, you're gonna get the wrong idea. Like, for example, this piece suspends zippers and little belts from the ceiling to slowly drag over this cymbal and create just one layer of sound texture. This is a waterproof microphone recording bubbles moving through mossy water. This is a fluid that's moving one drop at a time onto these crossed poles. So it's not the sound of a drop of water hitting a pool of water. It is just the sound of a drop of water, period. A few of these pieces utilize randomness, and most seem to prioritize the aesthetics of instruments themselves, so that even if you can't pick out the sound that they're making, the instruments always feel like they're contributing to the space. And by the way, these were absolutely all making sounds. It was just really hard to record most of them using the microphone that we had on hand. The one that we actually could record was my favorite, it turns out. This is a spinning wheel, of course, that's bouncing this ping pong ball between two strings. Gorgeous stuff. I loved that idea. All of those sounds and a lot more feed into the mothership here, where Jad later took the controls. Sound is thrown out of these long tubes, which I'm guessing are meant to be a physical way of blending all these different sounds together and make them all sound cohesive. Like when you hold a paper towel tube up to your ear, it's louder, but the sound is more jumbled, you know? Anyway, The whole soundscape was wonderful to experience. It filled the room effectively, and it sounded beautiful. And it acted as a bit of a metaphor for the design of the clothes this season, putting a great amount of effort into every detail and preparing for months, all so that the clothes and the music could convincingly take on a life of their own. Just to set the stage here for what we're talking about, from the Yohji Yamamoto show to Victoria Beckham, it was 40 minutes on the fashion bus. And the fashion bus was going as fast as it could, but there is always at least one time during Paris Fashion Week where you gotta run. So we ran. If you had told me, say 16 years ago, that I would become a big fan of Posh Spice, just her, I would have assumed that she had just started a new musical project. But Victoria Beckham has spent the last 16 years developing a label that's become a serious fashion player. She started the brand with a considered collection of sundresses, and now, 16 years later, we have returned to the sundress.
You are so lucky I'm not making you say, these are sundresses to get railed in, because I'm gonna...
Sundresses are, fellas, back me up here, they're fucking great. Who doesn't like them? Miss Beckham shows us the notable advances that have been made in the sundress field this season, with pattern cutting that makes traditional feminine lace appear to be almost like glitching out. The slinky Victoria Beckham dresses that have launched her into profitability are reinterpreted this season, creating the beautiful asymmetry those dresses are known for, with smocking, dip-dyed to draw attention to the drape of the fabric. My favorite sundress development features wire that defines and creates shape at the shoulders and in the hems of some of the rompers. Beckham seems to excel when incorporating wire into clothing. My favorite single dress designed in 2024 belonged to Victoria Beckham and used a wire frame to create this undulating dress effect. What I appreciate about Miss Beckham is that she doesn't seem to be easily persuaded away from an unconventional idea. And her ideas are truly unconventional and they're exciting. It almost feels like she uses the veneer of familiar clothes to not freak out her fan base while she makes shit like this. And by the way, I like this design at the bust, but what I especially like about it is I don't think there's any other brand that would have tried this idea. Beckham is not a trained designer, but that's true of other great designers that are currently working. Sometimes we really owe it to ourselves to be open-minded to the work of outsiders. Because, whatever design process is giving us this, and this should be given a fair shot. The thing that'll determine whether these sorts of ideas are valuable is the market. And it seems to be responding to Miss Beckham positively. Outside of dresses, wire creates eccentric shapes in leather shirts, giving these shirts funhouse collars, plackets, cuffs, and hems. I would even say funhouse is a theme overall in this collection, including these inverted and twisted jersey tank dresses topped with a necklace to hold your VB sunglasses. But if I'm being completely honest, my favorite looks in the entire collection are these feathered ones. I like how they're placed. I like the colors they come in. It's a hit. Sarah Burton is off and running. This is her second show as the creative director of Givenchy. Danielle and I were very happy with her premiere, and I'm happy to say the new show further establishes a solid foundation. And I'm happiest about this leather jacket, the one that last season was the highlight of Sarah's premiere. This one somehow manages to be cooler. Sarah, hi. Please make these in boy sizes. Before we get further into the collection of clothes specifically, I want to share briefly a conversation that I had with legendary fashion critic Suzy Minkes. I didn't have this conversation with her at Givenchy or about Givenchy, but I feel like it's relevant to this collection and the whole season. I was seated next to Suzy while we were both waiting for something, and I was making polite conversation and asked her how she liked this week of shows and what her general thoughts were. Suzy leaned in close to me and said a very serious answer to a casual question. I'm paraphrasing, but she said, these old houses hire these young people and they're asking them to make very old clothes relevant again. And that's not an easy thing to ask of somebody. And she's right. Hubert de Givenchy was designing in his heyday over 50 years ago. There's a million differences between women's lives then and women's lives now. Would it really be so bad to trust a designer to have a new idea? I mean, in fairness, there are references to Hubert's past here. We have the big tulle looks, which are a direct cut to spring 1959 haute couture. And I don't love this one nearly as much as I love her use of men's shirting, another strong tie to Hubert's body of work, one of his biggest claims to fame, actually. OG Givenchy actually introduced men's shirting into women's couture in his premiere season. This was the first big thing he made. If that look was replicated exactly today, it would probably be a little too stiff looking. This version still frames the face and the chest, which opens the door wide for big, loud jewelry, which makes a strong appearance throughout the entire collection. Very, very big jewelry, gargantuan jewelry, folks. It's big drip. Additionally, Sarah is pounding home her tailoring work. Amongst all the flash of the spicier looks, it's easy to miss Sarah introducing her single strongest garment category. I'm really glad that she's doing this because at her former place of work, Alexander McQueen, she owned women's tailoring. We never really got an opportunity to talk about that because we still have yet to ever go to an Alexander McQueen show, but I can say with confidence that I personally went into Alexander McQueen stores for years in the past just to look at their women's tailoring. I am relieved that Sarah is bringing those talents to Givenchy. Actually, okay, wait, hang on. We're gonna do a thing real quick. Hubert de Givenchy, awesome, love that guy. A weakness for that man was women's tailoring. There definitely were places where he did women's tailoring, like in looks like this. I think that these looks more are showing off technical prowess rather than the creation of beautiful, elegant clothes. It looks more like he's kind of getting this out of the way so he can get back to his strong suit, things like this. Miss Burton, on the other hand, seems right at home with women's tailoring. We have a classic hard-lined French shoulder here. We have a more standard power shoulder. We have a double-breasted look. We have a cropped blazer with some curved sleeves. We have a blazer in leather with a vent going most of the way up the back. There's a very simple suit jacket with a tasteful little power shoulder that's meant to completely hang open. So yes, tailoring, and these options look great, but most of this is pretty standard fare, especially considering Miss Burton is so good at tailoring. And I know everyone's thinking that I'm gonna freak out about the deconstructed blazer, and you're right. It appears twice in this show, and I am obviously obsessed with deconstruction motifs generally. What they have essentially done is they have split the blazer down the back, and then each of the sides of the split kind of flare out at the shoulders. Can you see it? The actual meat of the shoulder, which is now dropped much lower, kind of acts as an articulation for the elbow. And what's even better about that is that And what's even better is that because the waist is tailored to be so snatched in, that kind of Coke bottle like waving in and waving out, that's articulated out in the shoulder that becomes the elbow because the shoulder is padded. Can you imagine me trying to describe this for you in just like an essay that you like weren't allowed to see pictures for? My guess here is that the bra strap that we see, that's sewn into the garment itself, and so it's able to hang in just that perfect open way because we have the bra straps that are actually holding the garment up. I realize that I'm asking a lot here. Sarah, please turn this into product. I would really love for Givenchy to become the home of really daring work like this. There are people who want this. Please make it. To loosely bring all this back to Miss Minkez's comment, I don't think designers should be chained to house codes. We actually did a whole video about that recently, and I stick by what I said. If Sarah is great at women's tailoring, and she is, I'd like to see more of it. We're off to a stellar start here. It's almost 11 p.m. This has been 2 days of filming. My voice, you can definitely hear my voice is going out. Before I get too deep into this, though, I'm going to get Danny a mic real quick. Clapping in for sound alignment. Yep.
Hi, folks.
If you have stuck around this long in the video, thank you so much. Your time is extremely important to us. We do not take that for granted at all. Our goal is that you walk away from these videos enriched and that you have actually learned something, that you feel that your time has been well placed here. The reason these reviews take so long is because, frankly, y'all, there is plenty of shallow reactions on the internet, and there's a place for that. I personally love reactive content. I watch a lot of it myself. But if we're going to use up your time, we always want you to walk away saying, I'm glad I watched that. We have the immense privilege of not writing for a major publication and not being completely subservient to the algorithm. Our audience is so unbelievably supportive and allows us to take the time that is necessary in order to make content that is on this level. And honestly, the reason that things look so much better this time is because you all have been so supportive.
After 8 years and a lot of hours, folks, we finally got some lighting.
We have lights.
So we're not going to be like behind a cloud and then the sun comes out, and then behind a cloud and then the sun comes out.
We have lit. I'm so sorry for interrupting you. We have had to light every episode of this channel using a window.
Anything for fashion.
Anything for fashion. As we continue forward and continue doing this, because, buddy, I mean, I don't want to speak on behalf of you, but I'm doing this until I'm dead.
Where else am I going to go? What do you mean? Where else am I supposed to go after this?
Yeah, as you all continue to support us and as we move forward, right now we're looking for ways to try to speed this process up, because we don't want to cut any corners with this, because as always, we are making criticism that is for 100 years from now, but we want you all to be able to have this relatively soon after fashion weekends.
But I also think that you guys have been willing to stick it out with us for so long, because after you do watch the video, you come to the realization that nobody does it like this. I guess something that I also think might be important to tell the audience, this is the first season where we literally ran out of time. Yeah. There were, like, I am not kidding, 10 more things we wanted to do. And we physically could not get to them, which I would say is meaningfully, this is the first time that that's happened to us. This is also a little bit of a, if we were planning on coming and we had to tell you no, I'm so sorry. Yeah. There is really, really only so many hours in a day. This was also we broke our record for the most amount of shows in a day.
Oh yeah, how many did we
8.
It was literally 8. Yeah, 8 shows in a single day, which, I mean, I realize it's like, what could be so difficult? You're in an Uber and then you go into a show.
We're not Ubering, folks.
And it's, yeah, I mean, in some cases we were literally.
It's fashion bus, metro, and Uber when I'm like about to throw up.
Oh yeah. The Uber is kind of a last, because usually it's slower than the metro.
Yes. And so usually it's just never preferable.
This part of the video is where the two of us get to talk about our personal favorites and kind of what we think about the industry and this season generally. Do you want to go first with favorite show, or you want me to go first?
Alaïa was so good, y'all.
Yeah, that was extremely good. We said it in the review, but you literally cried.
Yeah, it was a little embarrassing because we were sitting in different parts of the room, and then I walked up to you after the show, and I was just like biting down on my teeth, trying to not lose it. And then you looked at me and you went, oh, and I lost it. And then, like, our peers were coming up to us, and I'm like, don't fucking look at me.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I covered for you pretty well. I, like, grabbed you and hugged you and, like, smiled really big, and I was like, just move to tears, folks. Clothes that cry.
Oh, my God.
My favorite single collection. It's so hard to say because, like, I mean, I've been a fan of Matthieu Blazy since, I think, literally 2013. And I had followed him like through each of his jobs after that, because he was kind of one of the first, like, not like household name designers that I found. He was kind of my underground, like, guy. And then when he got announced as the guy at Chanel, it was just like, what the fuck? I've literally followed this guy since I got into clothes, and like, he's literally at Chanel now. So like, I know that Chanel, in this transitionary period, they really want to splash out on that first collection. And so even though it's a ready-to-wear collection, what I saw in that showroom, and maybe you'll agree,
100%.
those were couture clothes.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Those were, yeah, I mean, y'all saw it in the beginning of
I have never been a Chanel girly.
Right.
ever. I am, as of today, ready to give my whole life over to Chanel.
It was just like, it was so good. So it's, I guess all that to say, it's difficult to say like, that was by far the best show of the week, because we have this long-standing rule. You and I were talking about this morning. We have this long-standing rule that it's like, you got to let them build the foundation. You got to let them have 4 ready-to-wear shows, 2 years, so they can establish the foundation, and then we can start saying whether this was mind-blowing or not. But I just had such a transformative experience in the showroom, especially for that premiere, that I have to put Matthieu's first show up at my number 1 spot. My favorite was Chanel.
I think that those clothes were a really refreshing option for women. I think there is this misconception that women are willing to settle for polyester bullshit just because it looks pretty. And I think that collection of clothes was such a great reminder that we deserve so much better than that.
Definitely. And not to say that, I mean, Chanel obviously before that was very high-end clothing. Obviously the like polyester bullshit is not what Chanel was offering before.
No,
you're saying.
But the look was never really anything that felt compelling to me.
But it was this collection was such a celebration of what women can wear that it was just like, it was just crazy, crazy, crazy. Single favorite thing that you've seen. And I think that the more fun way of doing this is that can't be from one of the 2 that we just listed.
Some of the accessories at Celine were really, really good.
Which ones?
I'm thinking there's some like straw hats and the way that they were put with certain outfits that I was really impressed by, because it's something that someone could, if they really wanted to, emulate in their own lives. It felt like in that way, at least somewhat approachable. And I guess what I like about Celine is that it's much more about your everyday life.
Definitely. And you covered that in the review really well, which is, it's a really interesting proposition. I feel like a lot of my personal idea of like what an excellent wardrobe means for someone, to me, that is more and more becoming like, what do you wear to the grocery store?
Right.
What are you wearing at home?
100%.
And it's much cooler to say like, I wear these pants every day and they're so special. My favorite thing that I saw this entire week, weirdly, I don't know what like favorite really means to me anymore for a lot of this stuff, but the thing I can't stop thinking about is the long coat from ERD. The men's one that you have to button all the way up that has this like really long line shape to it. That one, when I touched it in the showroom, it was such a strange textile and it was such a strange proposition. And to me, that was very much an example of Henry Alexander Levy pushing himself so that he can be like, I need to deliver something that doesn't already exist in the world. And I have to figure out how someone could say, wait, yeah, I'll actually wear that.
I think that this was his most approachable season.
Which for him meant like no compromises.
Right.
It was still like profoundly weird. It was still very...
In that way, I was very happy. It felt like I was moving away from like art runway show into like fashion runway show.
Yeah.
And I think that was really cool.
I think the disparity between what you see on the runway at ERD and what you see in the stores is going to slowly get closer and closer together. The biggest thing, I guess, to emphasize is that I really hope that everyone can see the evolution over time. And I hope that it's clear that we just are so hungry to do this the right way. The only reason we have been able to make meaningful progress, cover now 13 Paris Fashion Weeks, make 13 mega videos, it is only because of financial support from you all.
Thank you.
It is crazy how much it feels like our patrons are on our team. If you're not on there, you're not doing me a favor if you join. We have so many good exclusive videos on there.
How many interviews are they getting this season?
This season, oh, it's like 6.
Yeah.
6 like full-length interviews that we got. That one of the best interviews we've ever, some of the best on-screen time we've ever gotten with Henry Alexander Levy of ERD.
Something that I find very interesting, will be very interesting for new viewers, is we spoke to people who work on the runway set production side of things. And man, what unbelievable professionals.
Yeah, they make those huge, crazy sets. Like everyone's looking at them like, where did these sets come from? It comes from them. It's crazy. And we got to talk to them about how runway sets kind of create meaning that can enhance the collection and stuff. It was an unbelievable it's over an hour with them. It's so good. Okay, so, and also if you want to see a bunch of conversations between Danielle and I where we're just like yapping and talking about like weird things in the industry and sort of like how people act and how we handle certain things and like how we actually like run the company and stuff, we have a lot of like Q&A episodes where we're doing exactly this on the Patreon. It's actually become a really consistent thing, and I have loved doing that with you. And haven't you all loved hearing Daniela's beautiful voice?
Well, thank you.
Thank you all so much for joining us. Please go join that Patreon. If you get value from these videos, if you put them on while you're sewing, if you watch them to inspire you to go make something, I would ask that you just put the value back into the channel.
I love you. I'm talking to my husband. I love you.
Thanks. I love you too. I love doing this with you.
Yeah.
This is hard as fuck. This is so hard.
You're done for the day.
I love doing this with you.
Me too.
Bye, y'all.
It's over.